G'day all, LLJ here, just setting things up for a good couple of LLJ. Going to be interviewing our guests or talking to our guests, chatting to our guests, having a conversation with wrestling promoter Mitch Christen. Can't pronounce his last name. Sorry. Mitch. Never mind. He'll give me shit when he's on here probably. I'll send him the invite and we'll get this show on the road. Just got to stuff about for a bit. How's it going, mate? Not very organised as usual. um, yeah, just sent Mitch an invite. I'll just double check. Hang on. Yeah, just sent Mitch an invite. Should have him on here soon. He runs the All Star Wrestling Company in New South Wales. Really excited to talk to him. He's had a pretty good background in how he got his start, and it'll be interesting with like a lot of his background and journey. Picking his brain with how he became a wrestling promoter. And I'll ask him how you pronounce your last name. Just check. Um, he hasn't clicked the thing yet. Once he clicks the link I sent him, I'll add him on here. Just tried to call Mitch. He isn't responding, so I'm not sure what he's doing. Hopefully he hasn't forgotten and remembers that we're doing the live stream. What I might end up having to do is hop on, off and hop on when I can get in touch with him, and then do it then, unless I can get in touch with him like relatively now. All good. Just got a PM from Mitch. Just give me 10 minutes. He's like me. I always seem to run late because I think I've got to do this, got to do that. So how is everybody anyway? Feel free to comment and whatnot. Got me supplies ready. Got a Pepsi from my New York slice order I got last night, and some cold water to keep me refreshed. Trying to give up on soft drink though. It's empty carbs, but it's all about natural routine and easier said than done. While we wait, I'll put on some music. Chance to test out some of the stuff on StreamYard. Building up that anticipation. Check something. If anyone's watching the stream, feel free to comment. We're just waiting on the big build up. Just doing a big build up for Mitch. Just PM'd him again. I'll probably do another countdown Wants to ready to invite Mitch in just to add a bit of effect to things and build up height. Having a look at what other music's on here. Muck around the playlist. Just swapping to this. Building things up like night clubbing. While I wait, I'm gonna have some Pepsi. Mitch is probably having his morning coffee. Strong in a minute. Just that my one. I like that. I'm trying to strong in a minute. I just like the tone down. Bloody burp. Pepsi. I'm sort of keeping it going, so I want like the build up. Oh, I like that. Let's give this a try. Bit slow. Kicking the gear, mate. I'll have another Pepsi. I'll change this tune. Not really my favourite. Don't know what to think of this one. Got my laptop set up. Got some stuff I've bullet pointed that I thought would be good to ask Mitch, as well as people's comments and what they want to ask him, that I encourage. Hopefully my laptop doesn't run out of charge because it's not plugged in while I wait. Well, not while I wait, excuse me. While we're on the broadcast. Got a case of dry eyes, so the eyes twitching. See how I go. Might start practicing for when we bring Mitch on here. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Here is Mitch. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Here is Mitch. Minutes in, 19 and 54 minutes. Come on, Mitch. Now 20 minutes in. Change the tune while we wait. Feel free to comment. Just waiting on Mitch. Be good to chat while waiting. Also comment during the stream. Any questions for Mitch, etc., or just conversation would be appreciated. Bloody eyes twitching, so I've got like dry eyes. See how we go. Don't you hate that when you bloody get like a case of dry eyes, like lack of sleep, whatnot, and your bloody eye starts to twitch embarrassingly. Really annoying when you're out in public and it happens and everyone's looking at you laughing, ha ha ha. That's probably more my head than anything, but you know, that's how you feel. Come on, Mitch. 22 minutes in. Shouldn't be too much longer, I hope. Be great to get the show on the way, and got some stuff I've bullet pointed that I'm keen to ask me. Gonna do like another countdown for height when we get Mitch ready for when Mitch comes on here. Turn this. I'll just say it. I'll turn this shit off. And yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, just testing that out. Haha. Still waiting for Mitch. You probably all thought that he was ready and I was announcing him. We'll check to see. May end up having to hop on, hop off, start the stream again. I don't know, Mitch should be ready soon, but just you know, for it to be more professional, whatnot. Then again, I sort of try and set it up where it's uncut anyway, so it doesn't really matter as long as people enjoy it and set it up like casually and get people commenting. Ugh, 25 minutes in, bro. What are you doing? What, 30 minutes? No, 26 minutes. 30 minutes. put on some more music. If worst case scenario happens, I'll hop off and then hop on and confirm with Mitch. But yeah, he told me like it'd be 10 minutes. But yeah, he seems to be held up. Put this on. Feel free to comment. It's good to chat with people while I wait. And when Mitch comes on here, comment during the stream. That's fucking awful. Excuse the language, but oh well, fuck it. I don't mind swearing. I encourage it, fuck PC. Well, that sounds better. I'll keep it on. PM Mitch saying, "Where are you, bro?" "29 minutes in." Ladies and gentlemen, he's still not here. I'll put on some more music while we wait. Come on, dude. got a PM from Mitch. We'll be with, he'll be with us soon. He's just setting up now. I'll reread it now. Yeah, he'll be with it. He's just, hang on. Yeah, he'll be with us in a couple. He's just running a bit behind. Setting up now. Alright, we'll get this countdown happening. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. G'day Mitch, how are you?
I think I had you on mute. Am I on now?
Can hear you now.
Beautiful, beautiful. I was having some technical difficulties there.
Oh yeah, it happens. It was reminding me of some live shows where you get tech difficulties and then everyone's sort of like trying to get ready and the crowd are waiting and then heaps of tech difficulties arise.
It's funny you mentioned that we had a match between Steph DeLanda, Shazza McKenzie, and Jasmine Brettle on December 17th. And we tried to play Steph DeLanda's music and it didn't work. So technical difficulties are a part of my life, I guess.
That was the match I found a YouTube video of and shared on my Facebook group.
Yeah, we uploaded it a couple days ago. So it was a banger match, but there was a slight technical difficulty there.
Yeah, I remember Steph coming out and it's like, you know who I am? Play my music. Where's my music?
Yeah, she played it pretty well. I'm glad she didn't take too much offense to that.
Yeah, no worries. So how have you been? How was your Christmas?
Oh, Christmas was typical Christmas, just hanging out with everyone, having a good time. How was yours?
Yeah, not too bad. Caught up with a mate, went to like a Christmas feast.
A Christmas feast?
Yeah, not really a feast. Just more like a get together and basic food like chicken, salad, and all that stuff.
The typical.
And he drank the last of the creaming soda, so I was a bit peeved. So I didn't get any.
Oh, you're a creaming soda guy.
Yeah, I don't mind the stuff. Got bored of like a lot of the other soft drinks, so decided to get into creaming soda and sauce.
Yeah, creaming soda is a good soda, but my personal favorite is Pepsi, room temp.
Oh yeah, I'm drinking Pepsi on the broadcast.
Beautiful. That's the perfect way to set up for me.
Yeah, got New York Slice last night, so I had like a bottle of Pepsi left over from it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've got some stuff I've noted down, bullet pointed. I'd probably like to ask you. But first and foremost, I was struggling with your last name. How do you pronounce that?
It's Christen, but a lot of people they go Christensen, Christian, but no, Mitch Christen.
Yeah, Christen. Yeah, because I was is that like Viking heritage?
It's Danish.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's apparently a very common surname in Denmark, and that's where my lineage goes back to.
Yeah, when I done my ancestry.com DNA genealogy ages ago, but then they got rid of the Scandinavian category. I had like 22%, so I was Norway, Sweden, and Denmark in me 22%.
It's pretty awesome. That Viking heritage.
Yeah, I think my last name Johnson, even though it's English Scottish, I think like variations like Johansson are Scandinavian. So yeah. But anyway, we'll get into it. Might ask you first and foremost, how did All Star Wrestling start?
Um, well, I was studying radio and video production, and I kind of wanted like we were in that class. We'd learn how to do like a lot of stuff that would translate to pro wrestling. So we'd have like the audio stuff. We'd learn how to do video production from behind the camera and in front of the camera. We'd also learn how to make websites and all that. So my original plan was to be like a radio presenter, and a lot of people were confident that that's how I'd make my living, and it's not how I make my living. But I had all these skills, and I was like, what what could I use them for? And pro wrestling kind of hit, and I've always kind of had like a business mind as well, so it's a good mix. I get to use those video production skills, my audio and presenting skills, website design, business skills, all into All Star. And how it started, it was very humble beginnings. We wanted to run like a little community hall in Wollongong, which is where I live now. All Star Sydney based. Um, we wanted to run there. We eventually ended up in a little club, and we used to wrestle on the dance floor of this little club in front of maybe 80 people. And that's how it all started. Humble beginnings for All Star Wrestling.
Sounds awesome. Um, yeah, it's good to sort of like start with like building up like your local area and get people behind the product. It's really awesome how All Star Wrestling's evolved.
It was a good thing as well because starting out regionally, because Wollongong's obviously a regional city, the building rent was a lot cheaper, and it building rent for some buildings can be as high as $2,000 or $3,000 sometimes. So to get a building in Wollongong for a few $100s back then, that was amazingly helpful because All Star might not have survived in the early stages if we always started in Sydney like we are now.
yeah, right. Also with like Sydney, like you've got a reputation now, but like starting somewhere smaller, you probably got like the local community behind it, and it was sort of like easier to get that interaction with the locals. And then when the company got more popular, you built that fan base up, and then Sydney and end up being able to like take the business to Sydney.
Yeah, well, like I see the Wollongong years as kind of things where we could trial and error, and we met some good people along the way. You said that the community would probably rally behind us. You would expect that, but they didn't really rally behind us all that much, which is why the move to Sydney was essential. As I said, we were wrestling in front of maybe 80 people on a good night. We might have 100, 120, but it was typically 80 people. We still have some loyal Wollongong supporters that come up to our Sydney shows, but Wollongong as a community didn't really get behind us as much as I would have liked in those early days.
Right, yeah. You'd think they would, because I think Wollongong have had like a few promotions there, but obviously not.
Well, they got behind AWF. AWF used to run here for a number of years when I was a kid, and I used to go to their shows. And those were always pretty well supported. And there's a promotion here called Rock and Roll Wrestling as well. So it might have been a case of just the local community wanting to support rock and roll at that time, and not All Star, which maybe the city is too small for two promotions. I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. Sydney seems to be a real prime spot for wrestling nowadays as well. Where you got like a lot of promotions running there, and it's starting to like build up a good base for a market where people can explore to different promotions and Australian wrestling and a whole benefits.
Yeah, I think we've done a count before. I think there's like 16 promotions in New South Wales, which is that's huge. But I think like 9 or 10 of them are located in Sydney, so it's very competitive. It's great for the fans though. Like you can watch a show pretty much every weekend in Sydney.
Yeah. Hopefully Wollongong, because it should be big enough. Like they've had a decent wrestling heritage. Gets like more competitive with more variety as well. Because I think it's working in Sydney where there's more variety, and it's like good for the fans where people can have a smorgasbord like local music gigs, check out different wrestling shows.
Yeah, I think with Wollongong, like for wrestling to grow in New South Wales, we kind of have to go to these areas. We can't all stick to Sydney. Like All Star's very successful in Sydney, but there's other promotions that, they're not as successful in Sydney. So for those promotions, maybe they could try and run, a Wollongong or a Central Coast or a Blue Mountains, or I was going to say Newcastle, but there's 3 promotions in Newcastle as well. But these smaller promotions that maybe they're not doing amazing in Sydney, there's this massive area in New South Wales to just go and visit, all these little towns. They could try that. I think the regional wrestling landscape could be a lot better, a lot more improved, but it doesn't seem like a lot of the Sydney promotions want to go there.
Yeah, Newcastle, I'm not sure of all the promotions, but I know you got like Newey Pro.
Yeah, Newey Pro and our friends Kingdom Wrestling Entertainment, they're up there as well. And there's another one.
Yeah, I've heard of Kingdom Entertainment. I think I watched one of their shows on stream. The one with Killer Cross's wife, but I can't think of her name.
Yeah, Scarlett Bordeaux.
Yeah, Scarlett Bordeaux. She was on her show.
Yeah, that was their very first show, I believe.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. They've probably come along since then. A fella I'm friends with or acquaintances with, Zuzu the Muscle Clown's been doing pretty well in Kingdom.
Yeah, I think he holds a championship there. Kingdom. They're a really good little promotion in Newcastle. It seems like they're filling up their buildings now as well, and they've got this big, beautiful set as well, which is like I can't think of many other promotions that have a set as good as them. So I definitely recommend anyone listening, if they're looking for a Newcastle promotion or Hunter Valley promotion, give Kingdom Wrestling Entertainment a look on YouTube or wherever you can find their stuff.
Yeah, Hunter Valley's another area where they've had wrestling heritage. I'm not sure of the current landscape, but I remember just being a fan, skimming through the internet, looking up like different promotions in Australia, just being obsessed with wrestling, local wrestling, etc. At Hunter
Yep.
Valley actually had a fairly good landscape.
Yeah, well, Hunter Valley became Kingdom Wrestling Entertainment, so it's the same promotion, kind of, just under a different name. But Hunter Valley was doing some really amazing things during their run. So if people can get Hunter Valley as well, that's definitely worth reliving.
Yeah, I remember keeping up with them. I don't think I've watched any of their stuff on stream or YouTube, but I remember I might have skimmed through matches on YouTube. I remember keeping up with them through Facebook platforms, whatnot, and they seem to have like a good setup with how they build up their talent.
Yeah, they were a really amazing promotion, and I guess some people would say they've fallen off a little bit, but I don't think that. Like the crowds have died down a little bit, but I think that's happened everywhere for Newcastle and Sydney as well, and as I mentioned before, Wollongong. So I'd definitely give Kingdom a watch, and Hunter Valley as well, if you can find anything of theirs. Both well worth watching, and I'd highly recommend them.
Yeah. this leads me to something I wrote down in the bullet points here. What went into starting the promotion?
Well, I broke into wrestling in 2008, so I had a good like a good base for wrestling. Like I learned how to referee, I learned how to put up a ring. I think you need all those basic skills on some level to even think about starting a promotion. It also takes money. Like a wrestling ring, I think my wrestling ring was about $11,000 for everything just to get it in, and then an additional $1,000 for the wood. So it's going to cost money, and then contacts as well. Like I didn't have the best contacts, so I probably didn't start with all of the talent that I would have liked to have started with. It takes all those things to go into starting a promotion, and that's what went into starting All Star Wrestling as well.
And then from there, you've got like the right people for the right job overall, and probably got a good current, so to speak. Would you like to go into that a bit more with like the journey you went to with like set the early stages? Actually, we'll start from what I bullet pointed. Oh no, we won't. Early stages onto where you're currently at with just setting up the right people, right crew, right roster, etc.
Yeah, so I don't want to bury anyone, but in the early stages, like
Yeah.
we didn't have like we've got amazing camera people now, like they're the best. Back in the day, we had guys that would film shows on, cheap cameras or mobile phones, and it wasn't a good look, and it didn't result in a good product. We also didn't have the best building. We didn't have the best backstage areas because the shows weren't doing amazing financially. As time has gone on, we've increased our crew, I guess you'd say. Like our team has improved, but we've got more people now. So like it's taken a lot of time to find the right people, but it's also word of mouth. Like you meet someone and then someone will say, "Oh, I know a really good photographer." Like for the longest time, we didn't have a photographer, but now we've got a guy named Mark, and he's an amazing photographer, and we use his photos daily. Um, it was a gradual process to meet all these people and get them together. And now I think we're in the best space, not only with wrestlers that All Stars ever been, but also the staff. The staff are, they're really amazing and underrated. And I probably don't thank them enough, and the wrestlers don't thank them enough. But without the staff, there is no show. So if anyone from the staff listens to this, keep doing a good job. You guys are amazing.
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm always one for everyone has their job. So really, it comes down to respect versus ego. Sometimes I think with wrestling, and I think there needs to be like more respect at times. I'm not gonna like try. I'm sort of dug a hole for myself, but um, like I think everyone, regardless of their position, helps like keep the show together. Like I myself done a gig for Queensland Championship Wrestling for a short while, and I was writing columns for their website, the Lazar Report. Um, and I was like a play-by-play ring introduction person, but
Yeah.
sometimes I copped, oh, you're just a play-by-play person, you're just a commentator. But through researching the history of that position, and even talking to Dazzler Dunlop, he was saying back in the day, the play-by-play person used to actually call a match. So it was like a referee. The referees had an important role as well. So um, if there was more emphasis on the art of like the different positions and how everything functions, like a movie production, whatnot, I think like with All Star, they have a great production. I think I'm just sort of getting out like the politics of like some of the indie promotions that you hear of.
Yeah, well, we don't have a lot of that, but what you say is true that the play by play, for example, that's so important, but so is a referee. Like we've had some average referees on before, but now our referees are top notch, and it's so much easier when you have a referee who really knows what they're doing. It's also, even things as simple as, we got a truck driver and he's super reliable, and a lot of people probably wouldn't think that the truck driver is important, but he's so important to what we do. Our ticket people, they're so important. Every single person has a role, and for me, as the person who manages it all, they've all got to be on the ball, or it causes extra stress for me, extra problems for me. So I definitely respect everyone, not just the wrestlers, but our staff, our club staff as well, venue staff. Everyone is so important to the success of an all-star show, and it goes from the truck driver and the people taking the tickets all the way up to the heavyweight champion.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not burying my time with QCW. Like, there was a lot of stuff there where we worked together well, but you did get one or two egos where they'd be like, they had like an issue or whatever. You get that click bullshit where they'd be like, "Oh, you're just a play-by-play person," and it used to annoy me because I'm thinking, I had the attitude of, it doesn't matter what I am, we're all in it together trying to make the show work.
Yeah, that's right. I think the people you're referencing there will probably be people who aren't that educated on the business, because I think anyone worth their weight would know that that a play-by-play person, for example, is so important. And as I mentioned before, referees, everyone's important to the show, and I know for a fact we don't have that in All Star, but I do know that it happens other places. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that.
Yeah, I was pretty green with the play-by-play stuff, so there's probably a lot that it depends who you're working for. But like when I was talking to Dazzler Dunlop, I was amazed because I wasn't like taught to call a match or anything. I was just basically thrown out there, and I had to I had like basic stuff that I would pretty much just had to go by instinct. Was fairly green, and there was a few people that were fairly green on the roster as well, because they had Jimmy Sparks had trained like a lot of people from who were fresh, so he wasn't using a lot of established talent, and was creating more like a local market. But it wasn't too bad. Jimmy Sparks used to wrestle in New Zealand for NZ WPW, then he come over and started QCW, and they had a branch on the Sunshine Coast where I was at the time in Queensland, and then you had one in Townsville. But I won't talk too much about QCW days. I'm thankful for the opportunity, and yeah, I enjoyed my time there. I had like some stuff I clashed with, just with like I was saying, like egos, politics. But yeah, like writing columns for their website, and there was a young, enthusiastic roster, so that was good with the bad, so to speak. But I'll get into this. Leads me into another thing I wrote down. What were the early days of All Star like? 2018, 2019.
I think I touched on it pretty well before. Like it was growing stages, so we were still experimenting with certain wrestlers. We were experimenting with certain staff members. We were experimenting with our production. We were experimenting with everything that goes into a wrestling promotion. I think the shows I have, obviously I have an affinity towards them because they're the early days. I'd say though, to be fair, most of the shows were probably average to above average, so nothing to write home about, not to the level it is today. But I think that it was a solid little alternative in Wollongong that set the stages for something bigger. So I can't put anything negative on the early days of All Star. They were paramount to the success we're having now, and I'll always look back on them fondly.
Sounds good. Yeah. Hopefully, there's a few QCW people watching this. They can read between the lines of what I'm saying too, and it doesn't look like I'm just burying people. But I think
I
I
don't
was
know.
using.
I don't know QCW. Who are they? Do they still run?
Nah, they've gone out of business now. I was with them
Ah.
in 2013. I think they finished up 14 or 15. They started like 2012, so they were only around for a short while. If I got my maths right, I could be wrong. But yeah, I was using like my example as like a point I was making with like just like some of the little things where I think All Star Wrestling have got stuff together really well, where um some companies sort of like don't have like the respect factor in place where everyone has a role to play and there's like a lack of organisation.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that most people compliment All Star on behind the scenes, and that's, it's a nice atmosphere to be around. There's not a lot of politics or anything like that, and we kind of frown upon that. Like if I hear about that stuff going on, there's generally a conversation about it, and if someone continues to be a problem, we just won't put them on shows anymore. It's very important to me that the backstage area is a positive place to be for everyone, from our longest tenured wrestlers to new guys. I don't want people going away and saying, oh, All Star isn't a place I want to be, or I felt uncomfortable at All Star. That's not something I'd ever want to put anyone through, to be honest.
GCW weren't too bad of a promotion in hindsight. I think there was a lot of rookie talent, and the promoter had a background as a pro wrestler, and he was new to promoting in some ways. So I think there was a lot of like stuff where people were enthusiastic, but there was a lot of stuff where it was a very green promotion as well. But so it probably didn't evolve where All Star Wrestling evolved to something where everyone knows what they're doing. But I'll
Yeah,
get.
I think every promotion is going to have those early problems though. Like we certainly did. There was issues where we didn't have music running at a show properly, or our production was bad, or our microphones weren't working. It took probably a good 12 months to really learn every aspect of the wrestling business when it came to All Stars. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that there was some teething problems, I guess, with QCW.
Definitely. Um, this leads me like there's a lot of stuff you've probably elaborated on, but I'll probably ask some of the stuff I bullet point anyway, and feel free to sort of pass on some of the stuff, or if you feel like there's stuff you can comment. But the next one I was going to ask you, how did All Star grow from a very small promotion to one of the biggest in New South Wales?
Um, that's a good question. Like, our management group, they say they always expected it to become what it is, and I know they're listening today. So, hello, Big Four. Um, it was, for me, it was a natural thing when we went to Sydney. We went to Sydney like 2 months before COVID, and then we went into COVID, and we come back, and we've just always done really well since. I don't know how that's really happened, but I'm certainly pleased that it has. I think maybe in Wollongong we were always working to these standards and always trying to improve, and then in a bigger market, maybe more people have learned to appreciate that. Um, it definitely helps being in a bigger market as well. Like All Star wouldn't be what it is today without making that big risk in late 2019 to go to Sydney. It's, I guess it's everything. It's the people involved as well, and I've put them over already. But the staff, the wrestlers, they all work so hard. When you have everyone working so hard, it's hard for something not to grow and eventually become a success.
Um, yeah, definitely. This leads me into like a different sort of topic, but similar. What are your favourite matches, shows in All Stars almost 5 year history?
That's a tough question. So we do this thing on Instagram where people can ask me questions, and My answer for favorite show is typically Steel City Showdown 2019, which was a Wollongong show. I think it was one of our best shows in Wollongong. Now, as All Stars grown, though, it's hard to look past both of our A Night to Remember shows, which are our biggest shows of the year. We had massive crowds there, and I think best show, most favorite show nowadays would have to be A Night to Remember 3, which had over 300 people in attendance, I believe, and it was just an amazing night, kind of a culmination of everything we worked hard for, and our first big crowd out of COVID. And my favorite All-Star match, has been so many amazing ones. Off the top of my head, I loved Keegan Brettle versus Kingston Eclipse at A Night to Remember 2, and that one's on YouTube, so people should check that out. It was just a brawl, and Kingston Eclipse is one of the most underrated wrestlers in this part of the world, in my opinion. And then this year we've had so many great matches as well. Like, I loved Aries versus Ryan Eagles. Carlito versus Keegan versus Ryan Eagles was a great match. We had a really good one just a couple weeks ago on December 17th. Aries and Ricky South. That was a really good match. Jasmine Brettle versus Erica Reed is one of my favorites as well. There's a lot. It's too hard to pick the absolute number one, but there's 5 or 6 good ones there.
I'm really pumped for the match between Ryan Eagles and Robbie Eagles at your next show. Care to elaborate on your next show coming up?
Yeah, it's our Summer Spectacular. It's one of our biggest shows of the year. As you said, we got Ryan Eagles versus Robbie Eagles, which is, that's a huge match, and it hasn't been seen very often. I think it's only happened maybe 3 or 4 times in their 15-year history, so it's definitely great to have that. Also, we've got a tag match with Hell Yeah and a mystery partner. He's going to take on Morgan Rose and Otis. Got a flag match between B-Boy and Johnny Starr, and perhaps most exciting, apart from the main event, Aries and Jack Dullahan, who are 2 of our young homegrown stars. They're finally going to fight after 3 months of feuding. They're going to duke it out at the Padstow RSL. So those are the 4 announced matches currently, and there's more to come. It's going to be an amazing show. So anyone in New South Wales who doesn't already come to our show should definitely come and check that one out.
What venue and part of New South Wales is it going to be held at?
So it's at the Padstow RSL, which is where we run majority of our events in Sydney. And that's in the Bankstown area. So maybe 20-minute drive from Eastern Sydney. So it's not too far. It's nice and centrally located in terms of, geographically. So, and also I got to put over the venue. It's an amazing venue, and everyone will want to watch wrestling there. So come along the Padstow RSL.
Nice. With the Ryan Eagles, Robbie Eagles match, is that for the All-Star title, I believe?
Yeah, it is. Ryan Eagles has been the champion since May 14th, and Robbie challenged him at the last show he was on for us, which was back in July. And all of our management have been trying to get the match, and Robbie might have been busy, or Ryan Eagles might have politicked his way out of it. But we finally sorted the match. The commissioner, Keegan Brettle, he sorted it all, and January 14th, they're going to duke it out for the All-Star Wrestling Heavyweight title, and it very well could be for the last time. The last time they wrestled was 5 years ago, so it would be an honor to host their last match together.
Yeah, Ryan Eagles back in the day was a fairly big name on the local scene. Had a bit of a Triple H rep, like you were saying, where he's good at being like a person who uses his mind and knows how to play politics. Robbie Eagles is on the rise. He's gotten gigs with New Japan, whatnot. So I'm really interested to see how the 2 brothers are going to go.
Yeah, well, Robbie's not on the rise. I think he's now one of the best junior heavyweights in the world. He's signed to New Japan, and he's regularly there. It's so hard to book him for a show. Like, when he comes back a few times a year. it's hard to get him because everyone wants to use him. He really is one of Australia's premier wrestlers, if not the premier wrestler. And there's not a nicer guy out there as well. Like Robbie Eagles is just the nicest guy. Everyone says it. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about him. And if he does happen to beat Ryan Eagles on January 14th, he would be a phenomenal all-star wrestling heavyweight champion.
Oh, definitely, because Ryan Eagles is a solid name himself. So I'm really interested to see with like Robbie Eagles how he's taken off and being a big name he is now in New Japan, plus Ryan Eagles' background in like the local scene. It's going to be an exciting match. I'm really interested to see how it goes.
Well, I'd definitely say that Ryan Eagles is one of the best wrestlers in the country as well. Highly underrated, and I think this All Star run, like he's just had so many amazing matches and moments, and he's good. He's someone that I can pick the brain of as well, which I like. Like I really like learning from Ryan Eagles. He's been amazing to have in All Stars, so he's done a great job, and we're proud of him as champion as well. Whoever wins on January 14th is a great choice for any championship in the country. So we're especially proud to have them at All Star.
When I was talking to Dazzler Dunlop, he did mention he really respected Robbie Eagles, and Robbie Eagles had like a taste for the old school, where he had like a wrestling move where he honoured Ron Miller, who was like an old school Australian wrestling veteran. I'm not sure if you caught the conversation I had with Dazzler Dunlop at all.
Yeah, I listened to it. Ken comes to all of our shows, and well, he's come to our last two. I won't say he's come to all of our shows, but he's a great guy as well. And when I saw that he was on here, I thought I would have to jump on, and I did listen to it all because I'm always looking to learn from Ken. And what he said about Robbie, from my knowledge, is right, and not a surprise that Robbie does respect the old school, and he is, I guess it seems cliche to say, but he would probably very much be a student of the game. And I do know that he uses the Ron Miller special as well as a finishing move. So, yeah, that's correct.
I'll be interviewing Peter Barry on Jan 8. He's another one who has a background in Australian wrestling, like 32 years.
Wow.
If you're interested in bringing in a veteran, he's Melbourne-based, like Dazzler Dunlop, where you're sort of interested in having veterans come along and do various things. I highly recommend him. He's like being referenced as like someone with a really good background.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely listen to that. And I love any veteran mind, like I mentioned Ryan Eagles before. I like picking his brain for information, and he's always forthcoming with it. Ken as well. He's given a lot of good advice and gone out of his way to help us a lot. And there's others as well that have really been helpful with their knowledge and experience. And that's something that's really helped All Star stand out as well.
Yeah, Ken has like a lot of great knowledge through talking with him, and I'm reading his book. It's like quite a good read. Have you read his book, or you reading his book, or haven't yet?
No, I bought his book in October, and because he was at our show in October, and I read it in a week. I was so fascinated, and I enjoyed it so much. I was reading it. We did a tour up near Queensland, and I read it on the way back. I was reading it on my phone torch. That's how fascinated I was by Ken's story. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, I'm reading it on Kindle. Yeah, Peter Farrell. Not Farrell. Bloody hell, Peter Ferry. He has like a background in like being a promoter, broadcaster, various roles in Australian wrestling. So he's a man with a lot of knowledge, like Dazzler Dunlop. Um, yeah, Dazzler Dunlop was quite impressive when I was talking to him too. Just talking about like modern wrestling and our opinions on it. What's your take on like a lot of the current mainstream wrestling with the spot fests and all that and psychology issues?
To be honest, with what Ken said, I think he said that it wasn't appealing to him. I'm kind of in the same boat. Um, like I like, I guess you call it a spot fest if it makes sense. So build up to things. But if it's just spots for the sake of spots, I don't love it. I try to give AEW a chance, and I was following them for a good year and a half, expecting them to pick up, and I never really got into them. And WWE, I haven't watched WWE in over a decade, so when it comes to the mainstream, I'm not too up to date with it. I do try and keep up to date with the Aussies that are over there. There are lots of talented Aussies, but apart from that, I'm mainly following the Australian scene these days.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same way. I find some of the mainstream stuff I try and keep up with, but it annoys me because you watch it and a lot of the stuff they're doing is like a training match. It's not like a proper match where in a training match you're just practicing spots and you're doing spots and they're not working the crowd as much as they should. And then the way they do the spots annoys me too. Like they'll hit a brutal finisher. Back when they were doing the false finish versus false finish thing, there was purpose to that because it was done with psychology and it worked. But now it's just false finish for the sake of it, and they do all this stuff that kills the heat.
Yeah, well, you look at a team like the Young Bucks, like they've got a massive fan base, and I get it, they're incredible athletes, but how many super kick parties do we need? Like the super kick used to be an amazing move, and it's realistic and all that, and now you see 20 of them in a match featuring the Young Bucks if it goes on long enough. So yeah, I'm not fond of that. I do love the traditional stuff. I do go back and watch a lot of 80s and 90s stuff. Um, but yeah, mainstream, it's not for me anymore. And I don't say that to be cool either. A lot of people are like, I don't watch WWE. It just doesn't appeal to me on much of a level, regardless of how extremely talented the athletes are in terms of athleticism.
Yeah, I've become more like I've always followed indies, but I've become more local wrestling indie inclined just because you seem to get like a lot more product with fundamentals where mainstream I struggle with because of like I'm not sure what they're doing with things at times, and you get into it, but then they don't like keep consistency.
Well, yeah, if you want to follow every mainstream promotion, like it's almost impossible now. Like WWE, I don't know how many hours of TV they're doing now, but I think on last check it was like 6. And then, AEW, they're doing 3, and then they've got like a massive TV, or no, YouTube taping, sorry. Every week you've got that, and then Impact has a 2-hour TV show, and now ROH has a web show, and the NWA is out there. There's so much, and you can't realistically follow it all. It would be impossible. And for me, even as an adult male, you don't have six hours to commit to watching the WWE anymore. It's so difficult for any adult, really.
What do you make of how things are going to go of ROH? Like they've had a lot of build up with like events and stuff, and ROH people appearing on AEW, but when they get their show running with Tony Khan's direction of ROH, how do you reckon they'll go?
To be honest, I don't really rate Tony Khan at all as a wrestling mind or anything like that. Like, that's not to say he hasn't done anything good, because he certainly has. But to me, he's not a wrestling mind. He's not a great wrestling, not a great wrestling mind. My opinion on Ring of Honor, I don't know. I haven't really followed it too much, so it might be an uneducated opinion here. But I think with a web show, it's hard, especially behind a paywall. It's hard to compete in a market like that. Like, people might give you a go for free, but it's going to be very hard for him to convince a large amount of people to spend, however much it is to watch an ROH show. Especially since ROH didn't have the massive audience that WWE or AEW had in the first place. I think he was really banking on it getting some kind of TV deal, and it hasn't happened. So this is the backup plan.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a lot of issues at the moment with a lot of television stations where a lot of people are turning more to streaming and streaming platforms.
Well, it's definitely the way of the future streaming. Like I don't know anyone anymore that watches TV unless it's for sport or a specific TV show that you can't get online. But it's all about now binging shows, and Netflix is now the number one thing, and Stan and all that. I think that's the way of the future for wrestling as well. That I don't think TV wrestling will last forever. I think give it 20, 30 years and it'll all be online.
Definitely. Like, I have a love hate for streaming. I love it in a lot of ways because you got great access, but the video store industry died, and I miss my video stores.
Yeah, I'm from that era as well, and I do miss the going there on a Friday night and getting 5 or 6 movies. But it's so great now as well. Like we can, like Netflix, if you think about it, for however much it is, I don't know how much it is, but let's say $15, you have access to hundreds of hours, if not thousands, of content at your fingertips. It's amazing. It's like, really, we've got to appreciate these things. But I do miss the video store days as well, and I know a lot of people that do. So you're not alone in that.
Yeah, I think the streaming era has a lot of good content, and I love it. And I hop back and forth through the different streaming platforms. But with the video stores, um, there's like a lot of stuff on streaming that you're trying to find a good like movie to watch at times. But if you got like a show or movie that you're interested in, you'll watch it. Like I've been watching the Yellowstone series, etc., Tulsa King. Um, but with the old video stores, there was nothing like skimming through like the old wrestling like DVDs or videotapes, or skimming through like what's available and talking to the person at the counter and having that interactive. Um, that leads me to like talking things old school, and then I'll lead on to the other thing. Um, Me and Dazzler Dunlop were talking about like AEW having some really good veterans in a position where they could help with producing, like Arn Anderson and Dean Malenko, and we're saying does TK Tony Khan actually utilise their knowledge?
Yeah,
And what?
well, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, what would your thoughts be on that regarding his position, and if he could like utilise his artillery more? Because I think he like brings in all these people with knowledge, and he's got like an overload. But at times, I feel like he's not utilising what he could with production, with how he does things.
Yeah, well, if you think from AEW's perspective, the names you mentioned and guys like Sting and CM Punk when he was there, and Bryan Danielson, these really are some of the greatest wrestling minds of all time. I would hope that Tony Khan is utilizing those names. I would think that he would be. He'd have to be. Um, it's hard to manage that type of thing. Like he'd have on one side he'd have his older talents and his guys from the WWE main events, and they'd have one opinion, and then you'd have his younger guys who have come from the indies and don't really know anything else, and they'd have their opinion on what works. That'd be your Kenny Omegas, your Young Bucks, etc. So then he's got to be the guy that filters it all out. So does he have the mind to do that? As I said before, I don't think he does, but I would hope that he's listening to both sides, because there's so much great information from an Arn Anderson or a Jake the Snake Roberts or a Sting or a CM Punk or Bryan Danielson, that you'd be silly not to take their advice on board. But then you also got to look at the other side as well. Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and those guys, they've had very successful wrestling careers as well, where they've made a ton of money. So you got to take their advice as well. I just think Tony Khan's biggest downfall might be that he's not a great filter, but he's also in one of the toughest positions in pro wrestling as well. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I reckon one bull is missing. Like, there's a few I could go on about. Like, you got Tully Blanchard, etc. as well. But there's an angle I see with Matt Hardy, because Matt Hardy had a background as a promoter when he was younger with Omega Wrestling, and then the Hardy Boys joined AEW, and then you had the Young Bucks, even though Jeff Hardy's had issues. But I reckon Matt Hardy would be a great one to tap into because he has like a balance between the old school mindset, having done it and come up, but also being modern. And I reckon with talent like the Young Bucks and whatnot, Matt Hardy would be a real good talent scout and mind as a producer for AEW.
Yeah, he definitely would be. Anyone that's got 20 to 25 years experience in wrestling or more, like you mentioned Tully Blanchard, he's obviously more. Um, that's definitely someone that you'd want on your side, giving advice to the younger guys, etc. You know, that's so important, even on an independent level. Like I always encourage our guys to listen to the more experienced talent. Like we've got so many great homegrown talents, and we always try and pair them with the experienced guys so they can learn. And I think AEW, I think they do that. They try to do that. I don't follow it anymore, but it's just it doesn't really work out for them always. But you know, a good example I can give you of that working out was CM Punk and MJF. I think MJF would have learned so much from working with CM Punk, and CM Punk would have had so much to teach because he's such a great wrestling mind as well.
Oh, definitely. I reckon that was a match made in heaven in some ways. CM Punk, MJF. I reckon MJF has so much potential. My complaint talking to Dazzler Dunlop though is just the way he's booked and the trash talk stuff. But if they done it where, you know, it's like an old school Fred Blassie or something where they've got good booking and they're actually tapping more into his potential, I reckon he'd be great.
Yeah, well, I think he's definitely one of the most. Well, he's the most interesting homegrown talent on AEW. So that's something for him. I don't know if you could make him better. I think he's a really talented guy. He's good in the ring. He's a great microphone worker. He's pretty much a total package. And I think I think his contract expires next year. There could very well be a bidding war between AEW and WWE for him because he's definitely talented enough to be a main event guy in WWE as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if he showed up in WWE and if Cody Rhodes eventually returns and then MJF attacks Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, well, they had that feud in AEW, so that would be an interesting throwback. And Cody, he's improved tenfold since leaving AEW, and if MJF somehow could as well, that could be one of the greatest feuds of the modern era, I guess.
Well, if he sticks with AEW, MJF just build some more depth with opponents for him and what you could utilize with your talent rather than doing we'll have like a list of contenders and there's like people with background stuff, but they don't seem to build depth. WWE struggle with this now, but back in the day, I remember one advantage WWE had is they built depth with their main eventers, where you had like people like Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold, for example, where people are behind them and had like stories and were like building feuds with like the main talent, and you had your up and comers. And I think that's what wrestling's missing in some ways in general. But before I lead into this other question, do you reckon with like All Star Wrestling, you'd bring in like a few veterans, or do you do that already? Like Dazzler Dunlop, whatnot, as like producers?
Well, in independent wrestling, we don't really have producers, but like we've got a lot of good veteran talent around. Like we talked about Ryan Eagles before, and he's very important. We've got Luke Watts as well. He's been around for, I want to say, about 15 years, and he's a good head to have as well. Then we got guys who've been around close to 10 years now as well, like Keegan Brettle, and he's really important to what we do as well. So we got a few good veteran minds, and you mentioned Ken. Ken has come to our last two shows, and as I mentioned before, he's given some really good advice. And I do hope that he continues to come to our shows. He seems to enjoy them, so it would be good to have him there and continue to learn from him. But yeah, it's important for us to have veterans around, and we're always looking to bring in experienced guys because they're only going to benefit the younger guys.
Oh, definitely. Like, it sounds like you've got some great locker room leaders in your locker room, and having like the veterans around, it makes the other talent like inspired, because there's like people they probably watched growing up at local shows as well, and it ends up encouraging like the new blood.
Yeah, but it's also good to have those guys around because um, I could give you an example. I got word that there was a wrestler in another locker room that was kind of acting up a little bit and kind of being unprofessional. But then he comes to an all-star show, and because there's, a Ryan Eagles and a Luke Watts and a Keegan, those guys kind of fall into line a little bit. Like they're not going to act that way around these guys because they have so much experience. Um, and they obviously respect these guys. With a locker room that might not have those guys around, and it kind of does become a bit more of a free for all. So the veterans are important as well for locker room morale and keeping things in line as well. Like I don't think All Star would be anywhere near as successful as it is without the veterans that we have. So they're incredibly important to what we do.
That leads me into what I've been building up for, even though I've gone on tangents and have ranted a little bit. Can you talk about some of the great domestic talent that has come through, such as Adam Brooks, Carlito, Carlos Cannon, Slex, etc.?
Yeah, so we had Adam Brooks and Slex in last year. I think they were both signed to Ring of Honor at the time, but obviously not wrestling there because of COVID. And they were great to have around, and it's good for those guys it's good for our guys to be around those guys and get in the ring with them, and it's a great opportunity as well for them to test themselves against some of the best. And as for Carlo Cannon, he's severely underrated. Like Carlo Cannon is such a gentleman and such a great person. Like I can't say enough good words about Carlo. He's another person that I've really been able to learn from as well. I had like a 2-hour phone conversation with him once, and he's just one of the best guys in Australian wrestling. I can't say enough good about Carlo. We've had Damian Slater in as well, and he was really great. All these guys have been great. It's important for us to have these people in because they elevate our guys and they make All Star better, and of course they help grow the brand as well. So Brooks, Carlo Cannon, Slex, all those guys, they've been a great help to All Star this year.
Yeah, I was saying Carlos Cannon, but is it Carlo Cannon?
Yeah, Carlo Cannon. He's been around a long time, and he's a really great wrestler. So if you haven't seen him before, definitely check him out. He's one of Australia's best.
I've seen some of his stuff. I've watched him on Underworld Wrestling, but I've also seen like some of his stuff, YouTube, whatnot, and kept up with him just through like keeping up with like internet media. He had like background with Lance Storm, I believe, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's Lance Storm's favorite trainee. Apparently, that's what I don't know if that's factual or if it's been said, but that's what I used to hear back in the day. That Carlo was Lance's favorite student, and from what Carlo's told me in the past, he and Lance are very close. So yeah, he's definitely got a background with Lance Storm, and he was training people at the Lance Storm Academy as well. So definitely a great person to have around in Australian wrestling, and probably not utilized as much as he should be, which is a shame.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent that I believe have had background with Lance Storm. They've like gone trained under him and come back, and then you've had Booker T, like is the latest one. A lot of people have trained under Booker T. I think a few went and trained with Seth Rollins as well. And then there's the Ballet Dojo in New Zealand, which is connected with New Japan. Seems to be a lot of avenues where people are utilising these places where they can learn great knowledge, and they're bringing it back to Australia, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really great thing. Like all these amazing wrestlers are training, Australians and training people in general. It's good that they still want to be a part of that. And the Fale Dojo, like, I don't know too much about what happens there, but I hear that it's a good school, a good training camp. And it's closed for Australians now. Like you can go over, and it's not going to cost you, $2,000 airfare, and then an additional 3 or 4,000 to train. It's a good affordable option for Australians, and it's great that we've got something like the Fale Dojo in New Zealand. But there's also so many great schools here in Australia as well. It didn't used to be like that, so it's good that it's like that today.
Does All Star Wrestling have a wrestling school?
We don't have a wrestling school. There's been talks about it before. What we typically do for New South Wales, we encourage people to go to the PWA school. In my opinion, that's the best wrestling school in Sydney. And up in Newcastle, the Newey Pro School is good. And for Wollongong, Rock and Roll Wrestling, they've got a good school too. We use a few of their wrestlers. And yeah, I can't criticize the Rock and Roll School at all. So there's some good options for people in New South Wales.
Yeah, PWA is a good option. Like talent like Robbie Eagles, who had background in PWA. I remember watching on like streaming the event where he had a match with Will Ospreay before Robbie Eagles went to New Japan. And that was fantastic. But just look at people like Robbie Eagles with PWA alone and their heritage. You get like really solid training with them.
Well, the good thing about PWA, the training school, is that they're not going to rush people onto shows. So what you see from the majority of promotions in Sydney is they'll have a wrestling school, and then they'll train a guy or girl for 3 months, and then they'll throw them on a show. Usually the guys and girls aren't ready, and someone gets hurt. Like there was a situation this year, I believe, where a wrestler was dropped on their head from what I can only assume is an inexperienced wrestler, and they've got what I've heard, a major neck injury, and they were wheeled out in an ambulance. With PWA, you're not going to have that. They're going to train with you and make sure you're ready. And as you mentioned, you're going to be trained by Robbie Eagles. You're going to be trained by Mick Moretti. Ricky South, I think he does the training there as well. Everyone I talk to says that the PWA school is the best in Sydney. So whenever I get someone asking me about that, that's where I send them, because All Star doesn't have a school.
Yeah, talking about neck injuries, I was actually doing play-by-play for a QCW show, and there was a match between Queensland wrestling veteran Flashman and Rabies the Clown. And this is how easy it can happen. They done a spot where he goes against the rope, and Rabies goes to do a simple leg drop, but it ended up being like really bad, where it connected into the back of Flash's neck, and then there was concern about it, and an ambulance come and took Flash to the hospital, and there was concern how serious it could be. It ended up being not too bad, but you always got to be well prepared with like your training and knowing your stuff. But yeah, like that's a great example of like how a spot can be mistimed, and you got to really like know your stuff, and you can still run into the risk of injury.
Yeah, well, 100%, and that's why it's so important to go to a school where the trainers, they have reputations, and they're not going to rush you onto shows to try and sell a few tickets at a club in Penrith. It's important to have world-class trainers, which PWA does have, and Newey Pro as well, and Rock and Roll as well. Those schools I recommend, because those trainers have all gone overseas and learned. But there's enough risk in wrestling where you can get injured at any moment, even doing it properly. So to do it untrained or not as well trained as you could be, it's really dangerous. And the wrestler that did get injured in that club over in Penrith, I don't think he's wrestled since. So who knows what he's up to? Like, I don't know. It's just, in a way, it's disgusting that this has happened. And it does lend so much more credibility to the opinion that, you've got to learn these things and do them properly and 100% be ready, both physically, mentally, and in ring.
Definitely. Fortunately for Flash, man, he come out all right. It wasn't a serious injury, but like you're talking about in Penrith, like there is the risk of serious injuries if even if you're trained properly. But at least if you're trained properly, there's less risk.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it. It's about minimizing risk, and when you rush people onto shows just to sell a few extra tickets, like, yeah, okay, you might have had a bigger crowd, but you're putting people at risk, and that's what happened to the poor wrestler that got dropped on his head and wheeled out in an ambulance. And who knows what kind of quality of life he's enjoying now. I can't imagine it's that great because he hasn't come back.
oh, definitely. When I was talking to Dazzler Dunlop, he was going into training and how he reckons people should learn to bump before anything. And when he was training, you got taught like your spots, and then you got taught your various counters. And he was saying how there doesn't seem to be as much emphasis on that as you'd like to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like Ken, obviously, he's trained people before, and obviously a great wrestler himself. So I'd definitely give plenty of credibility to that. I think it's the way the business has changed, and trainers these days, they're most trainers, because obviously PWA Rock and Roll Newey Pro, they're doing a good job. Most trainers don't really care if a guy's ready or not these days, and they go, "Oh, that's good enough." It is a problem, and it's not only a problem in New South Wales, it happens other places as well, but I'm just more up to date with it here. But it's so important to do it properly.
Yeah, if you get your basics right as well, and that's my complaint with some of the mainstream wrestling. It feels like a lot of people on the mainstream wrestling aren't even properly trained. But like the basics are the foundation of every match, and then when you get your basics right, you speed it up, and that's when you can like make a more faster paced match and do spots properly. And it feels like there's a real issue with like people having the right training, and it seems to be like so mainstream now. You see it in AEW all the time where people don't seem to be trained properly, and it's just like a training match. It's not like a proper match, and then they botch everything.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of those AEW botch compilations, but um, I don't know if all the AEW guys are trained. Like I know that they have a tendency to rush people on into shows as well, but like I can't say whether or not those guys are actually 100% trained or not. But it's definitely a problem here in New South Wales and the country as a whole, where people are half trained and getting onto shows and putting other people at risk. There's plenty of wrestlers that will fly themselves from Melbourne to Sydney or Queensland, and because they won't get booked in Melbourne, and they'll do a small show in Sydney and then get punted from there. That's just it's kind of how the scene is for some people, and I can't say I agree with it, but it's just something that I guess we have to frown upon and do our best not to enable that. That's what we try and do at All Star, and I know a lot of the better promotions in New South Wales are trying to do that as well.
Yeah, I think with the way All Star Wrestling's produced and the quality, a lot of the mainstream promotions could learn from All Star. If you had like the money behind you, you might be able to bankrupt them and take the market.
Well, that's a huge compliment. I don't know if I'd ever wanted to go mainstream. Like that would be I'd need a much bigger staff at least. Like I'm already flat out just doing my 30, 40 shows a year, and it would be amazing though to go mainstream. But I do think some mainstream promotions could take that on board a little bit. But again, I don't know their situations and what these guys have actually gone through. So
Yeah, I think with like the AEW, they sort of research a lot of indie talent and they give them a shot on shows. Unfortunately, I can sort of sum up what I think the problem is in America. You've got like the old school quality training places, but then there's a lot of places that aren't as quality, but then the talent make a name on the indies. but they sort of do it raw, and then they get a gig on AEW. But you can actually see, tell the difference between a talent that's had more traditional training and knows more, and then a talent that's gone raw and they've learnt their trade just wrestling matches on the indies and they botch stuff. And there's I think, issue with people making a name, but then they're learning on the job, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if that happens in AEW because I'm not following it anymore, but there's a lot of that on the independents, and I'm sure it happens around the world where guys get a little bit of training and then they're learning on the job. But that's probably what was happening that time where the wrestler that I just talked about got wheeled out in an ambulance. It's probably a case of, oh look, they're good enough for shows, and we'll let them learn the rest on the job. Obviously, they weren't ready for shows because someone's got injured out of it.
Yeah, that's where PWA sound really good with they make sure people are well prepared and they train them properly, and then you get put out on the show, and then you've got enough training experience through training, even if you're new, you then can learn experience in the ring, doing shows, but you're prepared for the safety aspects, and it's not you're half trained and just thrown out there and you have to learn stuff through muscle memory and being half trained, but you got a better foundation to work with, and like I said before, the basics are the foundation of every match.
Yeah, well, PWA and All Star and Nui Pro and Rock and Roll and the more reputable promotions in New South Wales, they don't really need to throw guys on shows before they're ready. So with PWA, what you're going to do, what they do, to my knowledge, because I've never been there and I'm not affiliated with them, but they'll train you up and then they'll put you on a smaller show and see how you go, and you kind of progress through that. It's not a case of they're rushing you onto a show because they need you on. They've got a good enough roster where they don't need to do that. It's desperate promoters trying to, such and such has 30 friends that'll turn up at the next show if we put them on. So let's put them on. And then that's what leads to poor quality product or people getting injured. And, in extreme circumstances as well, it's led to permanent disability in the wrestling industry as well. So it's definitely something that people need to be more cautious of, and we shouldn't be rushing people onto shows at all.
Sounds like they've got a great system where you got a minor league and major league, and WWE kind of had that with developmental territories, but your question sort of the what they're actually utilizing with it at times, because the product, whatnot. But yeah, that system in place, AEW could probably really utilize that. I know they do AEW Dark and whatnot, but they've got enough established wrestlers. They utilize them on the main brand and then just have a minor league show set up a lot and set it up a lot better. That would be the go.
See, with AEW, I think they're in a position as well where they don't need to rush people onto shows. They've got so many talented wrestlers, and there's so many talented wrestlers in the free agent pool that they shouldn't really be taking on a guy or girl who's not ready. What's an example? I think they had a basketball player recently debut. Why not take a veteran that's spent 10 years owning their craft and is really good and put them on? Or, give more TV time to, a guy that you've already got. AEW has 120 wrestlers. Imagine what they could do if they had 70 or 80.
Oh, definitely. 70 or 80 experienced wrestlers. Maybe not complete veterans, maybe a few ring generals and just wrestlers that are well trained. It'd make things a lot better, and then you got your minor league stuff where they can develop talent.
Yeah, well, that could be their Ring of Honor show or one of their web shows or whatever. But to me, it should be difficult to get on, international TV or national television, pay-per-view, all that. It should be difficult. It shouldn't be something for, someone who might have been half trained or whatever. And that's not saying that they do have that, because as I said, I don't watch, so I don't know. But I would hope that they're not doing that.
I think in some ways they're improving, but then I still find that AEW do that. And yeah, I question it with like all the people involved with the company and what Tony Khan could be utilising. But be the change you want to see in the world, so to speak. So maybe just saying something and other people being like-minded, Tony Khan might watch this and think, yeah, he's got a good point. But who knows? Leading on to
I'd be absolutely very excited if Tony Khan was listening to this. Hi, Tony.
Hey Tony, how's it going? Yeah, it'd be good. This leads me on to a point with favorite international talent you've had in. Hang on, favorite international you have had in All Star Wrestling.
Well, because of COVID, we haven't had that many. We've had Minoru Tanaka, we've had Ryo Fujiwara, we've had Carlito, Chris Masters, and we were meant to have Charlie Haas, but that was a pretty bad situation. But the favorite, I think, like, they were all amazing people, but the favorite would have to be Chris Masters. We did a 4-day tour with him, and he appeared the month before at our biggest show of the year. And Chris is such a great guy and a total professional, did everything we asked. He was friendly to all the fans. He's just an amazing person. And it was very funny going through the Australian outback with Chris Masters, an American guy from California who'd never really gone through any of that before. And he was pretty freaked out by the conditions of the Australian outback. And to be honest, I can't really blame him.
Yeah, I could agree with that. He probably thinks it's like bloody Wolf Creek or Mad Max. He's freaking out.
What happened with Chris? He was we were going from a town called Cuppa, which is about 9 or 10 hours west of Sydney, like northwest of Sydney. So, like, Masters had to do that trip, and like for the trip to and from Cuppa, there's like an outback road. And he had to go through that, and he was rightfully freaking out because it was just a dirt road and you're very isolated. Like, if your car breaks down, it could be an issue. So he was very concerned about that. And I remember he uploaded it to his Instagram showing how crazy that was. But to his credit, total professional. He made it to the next town, and yeah, he's just the best. Chris Masters is my favorite.
Yeah, I've heard good things about him. He's a talent that I feel had like a Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff thing going, and they could have really utilised him a lot more. He's doing really well. Like, he's done all right with NWA, Billy Corgan. He's doing really well on the independents, but I feel like there was a lot of missed opportunities in WWE and whatnot with him.
Well, he had that physique, and I think he, like, a lot of people said he wasn't charismatic, but I think he had a charisma about him as well. Obviously not to the level of The Rock or Stone Cold, but he definitely had potential. I don't know what happened with him. I know that he wasn't the best in ring at the start of his career, and that was because they kind of rushed him onto shows like we were just talking about. And then he come back for his second run, and he was a much better wrestler, and he wasn't utilized the way he should. But the guy's only 39 years old, and I don't know how he's not, a world champion somewhere or utilized on a mainstream show somewhere. Like, he's got a great attitude. He's got a great look. He's got good in-ring ability. He's a good microphone worker. Like, I don't see how there's not a spot for Chris Masters somewhere in a full-time wrestling promotion. I know he's with the NWA, but that's more part-time.
Yeah, definitely. I reckon I could see if he got like a foot in the door, him doing a Matt Cardona.
Yeah, well, he definitely could. Like, he's so talented as a guy, and we had him in Australia, and he worked so hard. Like, he didn't have to work as hard as he did, and he didn't have to go out to regional towns. But like, the guy is clearly passionate about his craft and passionate about the business, and he did so well. Like, I'd be so pleased to see him either make a huge name for himself on the indies and get that opportunity, or maybe even a call up back to the WWE or AEW. That would be great for Masters, and I'd be so happy for him if he did get that third shot.
Oh, definitely. He's still young enough. I'm only 36 myself. I think Roman Reigns is 36. So there's a lot of people relatively the same age as like Chris Masters that are doing really well in the mainstream at the moment. So I reckon the time is now where hopefully the mainstream think, oh, there's an opportunity here, and he does get that foot in the door again. And even if he's not the main event champion, give him a IC title.
Yeah, well, there was some talk about him doing the Royal Rumble, I think this year or last year. Like even that would be great for him. Like, I know that he'd want something longer, but I think, how is there not a spot for Chris Masters? He's got everything. And, as you said, he'd be a great addition to WWE mid card, AEW mid card. I don't know how he's not there, but it's good for promotions like us because we get to have him with us, and that's something that a lot of those guys will remember forever. At the time they went on tour with Chris Masters and got to wrestle him and hang out with him and all that.
Back in the day, it would have been cool in WWE. I can't remember if they did it. I don't think they did. If they brought in like Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff in a mentor role with him, a bit like they have done in the past. I reckon that would have worked a lot better than Rowdy Piper being a mentor for Sean O'Haire, because that was pretty shit. But Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff as a mentor for Chris Masters, and based like a lot of the passing the torch stuff, because they are both very similar with like their style and physique.
Yeah, very similar gimmick, and they wrestle the same style as well. So I definitely see the similarities.
Oh, definitely. This brings me to we've probably touched on this, but I'll ask it anyway. Thoughts on the overall wrestling landscape in New South Wales?
I think it's like every state in the country, I guess, apart from a couple. There's good and there's really, really bad. Like, there's some promotions out there that they'll just put a ring in a room and they're happy to draw 30, 40 people and book some bad talent and some good talent. And I don't really like that. But there's also a lot of really good stuff as well. Like All Star, I think is a great promotion. Obviously, Newey Pro, PWA, Rock and Roll, and then there's some occasional promotions as well that will put on a good show that are a bit hit and miss. But there's some really bad stuff as well. That like I mentioned, there was 10 or 11 promotions. You could probably cut 3 or 4 of the bad ones, and we'd all be much better off, in my opinion. And it's the same for everywhere else in Australia as well.
Oh, definitely. I think if you're going to do smaller shows, Billy Corgan's NWA and the old school studio wrestling would be like a good thing to study, because they do it right, where they get the interaction happening and they sort of have the right production and how they produce it.
Yeah, when I say smaller shows, like I can give you an example. Like, there's a promotion that runs near us, and they run a little community hall, and they draw 30 to 40 people on a good night. And it's I don't want to say it's embarrassing because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but when I look at that, it's kind of like, can they do better? And the answer is probably yes. Like, and that's not to bury them either, because All Star has done shows in front of 30 or 40 people at a community hall. But I aspired to do better, and I think these guys can too. It's just, I don't know if it's laziness or lack of a mind for it, but when I see these shows in front of 30 or 40 people where they're using really bad talent and all that, it's disheartening for me, and I think it hurts wrestling as well, because if you're a first timer that happens to stumble across one of these shows, which you probably wouldn't because they're not advertised, but if you happen to stumble across it, you'd go, oh, is this Aussie wrestling? Aussie wrestling shit. And then that hurts, the good promotions that are really trying to do their best, like the ones that I listed that are good, and it just drives us back. I think if we had 5 or 6 really good, reputable promotions in Sydney and we cut the fat of the bad ones, then we'd be a lot better off. But again, you've got a problem where the bad promotions think that they're doing a good job. So that causes an issue as well. Like they all think that they're about to become the next big thing, and they'll be stuck at a Gales Club or a Manor Hall for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I kind of have I'm in between with like smaller and bigger promotions. I think smaller promotions, if you create to like a local market, can be a good thing, and because there's a lot of people that think too big, where they miss the boat with stuff. But if you're going to be a bigger production, the same rules apply. Set the foundation right, like All Star Wrestling, have a great production and foundation. So a good example, hint, hint, All Star Wrestling.
Yeah, well, we're trying to set a foundation, and where we're trying to be a promotion where if you come to one of our shows and you've never been to Aussie wrestling before, hopefully you go away saying, "Man, I really love that show. Aussie wrestling is the best," and it improves the scene overall. Um, I think the smaller shows, there's not a problem with smaller shows. The problem is they're rushing talent onto shows, or they're booking people who shouldn't be on shows. Like there's so many wrestlers that just shouldn't be on a Sydney show. They should be doing smaller spot shows regionally or still training. I'm trying to get away from that, and I'm trying to discourage people from doing that. And I'm trying to set a good example, as the other promotions that I listed that are good. But there's others that just don't seem to care, or even worse, they think they're doing good. And that's a major problem, not only in New South Wales, but all over the country as well.
This leads me into talking about talent development and like all the components. Who are some of the rising stars and All Star that people might not be familiar with?
Oh, good question. We've got a really underrated roster. Like All Stars growing, but these guys are growing with us. Like off the top of my head, a wrestler you might not be familiar with, but he's really good, is Aries. Aries is one of our top guys now. He just had a great match with Ricky South. He's only 19 years old, but in my opinion, he could one day get signed to a major promotion. And then also on our roster, there's the Eastern States champion, Jack Dullahan. He's also had a breakout year. And, Chris Masters was heavily praising Dullahan. We've got a guy named Hell Yeah, who's one of the most charismatic wrestlers in New South Wales. He's really good. Wes Williams, who's injured, he's amazing as well. And then we've got all this other great talent like Keegan Brettle. He's been with us for 3 years. He's under the age of 30. Morgan Rose, Otis, Xander Sullivan, all these great wrestlers that are, young guys that are getting their names out there through All-Star, and we're giving them the ball and they're running with it every time.
Awesome stuff. That leads me to another thing I've bullet pointed. I'm having like tongue tiredness. Any unsung heroes within the All Star promotion?
There's the big four, which is our management group. There's Jace and Will from France is in there as well. Big shout out to those guys again. Like they're the unsung heroes in a way. Like they're so important. But I don't want to take away the importance, what I mentioned before, of the staff. The staff are incredibly important as well, even from the people that sell the tickets and the merchandise, all the way up to people like myself who are overseeing everything. And of course, the wrestlers that I just mentioned as well that might be underrated and not have the biggest fan bases, they're kind of the unsung heroes as well, because while we put on some cracker main events, we also put on cracker undercard matches. And those guys right now are the reason why those matches are as good as they are. The guys like Aries, Dullahan, Morgan Rose, Otis, Hell Yeah, the list goes on and on. pretty much everyone involved is an unsung hero in All Star Wrestling, and I love the crew we've got, and they all make my job infinitely easier.
Awesome stuff. This leads me into, what do you enjoy most from promoting?
I'm very passionate about promoting. Like, it's the ability to use my skills. Like, as I mentioned way earlier in this interview, I've always had a bit of a business mind, and I have those skills that I learned, the video production and the audio production and website design. Like, I like that aspect of it, but I also like seeing, wrestlers and staff as well have their dreams come true. Um, like a guy like Jack Dullahan, like he posted publicly how important it was for him to get in the ring with Chris Masters, and Hell Yeah did that as well. And they managed to do that because of me, or because of All Star rather. Like, we're a team. Um, then there's also guys like Keegan Brattle, who, he's one of the big dogs in All Star, and he's had the most amazing years of his career, and it's been great to see that happen in All Star. His wife Jasmine Brattle, she's had so many great matches as well in All Star. It's just great to see all these people grow alongside your brand. Like, it's inspiring to see guys who maybe weren't amazing 2 or 3 years ago, and now they're selling tickets and people really want to see their work, and they're excited and they're building fan bases. To me, that just, it warms my heart, and it makes me excited about continuing All Star in the future. It really is an amazing thing.
Oh, definitely. Really interesting, like, stuff. Food for thought. Yeah, like, it has me interested, and hopefully people watching this are fascinated as well by, like, trying to think what I was going to say, by what goes into things, whatnot. That leads me to this question. I've probably asked it in some ways, but I'll ask it again. What goes into promoting an event?
Well, for me, and as I mentioned before, there's some other promotions who wouldn't do any of this, but for me, it all starts with our graphic design guy, he's an unsung hero as well. His name's Jay Enzo, I believe, Nyuzo. If you need a wrestling poster or anything, he'll do it for you. Go seek him out. It all starts with him, and then I update the website, and we start moving tickets and start answering fan questions, and it's all such a big thing. Like, we do the advertising campaigns, and we're actively trying to get people interested in our shows, and that's something that I try and do every single day now that we've got a social media update. It keeps the fans engaged, keeps people interested, and all that just leads to show day, which is, that's pretty hectic as well. It's just so many people and so much goes into promoting an event. I would literally be here for hours if I went into it in depth.
Yeah, I might have to hit old mate up. Old mate, can't remember the person's name you just said.
Jay Enzo?
Yeah, that's the one. In future, because some of my graphics, whatnot, probably aren't the best, but I'm kind of looking at things from being more organic. But, like, I might look at investing more in how I market my Facebook group, and good couple of LLJ of better graphics and whatnot.
I think it's such an important thing to do that. And with Jay, he doesn't get enough of a shout out. So that's Jay Enzo again, Nyuzo. But with him, like, it all starts with him really. Like, if we didn't have a cool poster or we weren't able to promote our guys, we wouldn't have a show, or not a show that's worth putting on at least. So with him, he's so quick and he's so talented. Like, he doesn't get enough of a shout out. But Jay Enzo, I don't know if you'll ever hear this. He's an amazing part of All Star and truly valued by all of us in the team.
Awesome stuff. It's good to get, like, recognition to, like, people and what they contribute.
Yeah, it's so important to give those guys a shout out because nobody would really know who Jay Enzo is, but for me, he's so important to what we do. Like, and it's the same with what I mentioned before. Our camera people, our truck driver, our ticket takers, they're nobody really knows their names and they're not on posters. But without them, there's no show, and they're so important to the production and the product in general. Like, I don't know what I'd do without all of them. They're just as important as the wrestlers in a lot of ways.
My dad used to be like a truck driver where he'd drive road trains and he had a background as a diesel fitter by trade. And back in the days where like there was a lot of issues with overloading and pay and whatnot, but like just from the various avenues that people who do truck driving do, yeah, like what we're talking about, like people's roles, like truck driving's a great example of like how important it is where you get a good truck driver they can bring like the ring or various things for the show to and from, and they're like a great help.
Man, my truck driver, he's the best. Like, he stores the ring at his house because it's easier for him that way. Because I live in Wollongong, he lives in Sydney, and we run in Sydney. So he stores it at his house, and anything I ever need in terms of ring stuff, he'll always go and pick it up. His name is James. We nickname him Jeff, but he doesn't like that. So James is a top guy. He's another person that if he wasn't part of things, we probably wouldn't be able to do things the way we do. He's done so many kilometers this year, and he's a buddy of mine. So if he listens to this, he's truly appreciated as well, as is all the staff.
Um, Outside of All Star Wrestling, does he have a business where he does like gigs as a truck driver?
He works with fish tanks, so he's always very excited to show us his fish tanks, and like he's involved in delivering fish tanks and stuff. But he always takes time off for the wrestling. Any show we have on, he'll be there. He's the only person this year that's been to every show we put on. Like, I had to miss one because I had COVID, but he is the only one that has been at every single show we did this year. So he's incredibly helpful, and he's an asset to the team. And he met his girlfriend through All Star as well, so he's got a affinity towards the brand as well.
Nice. I was thinking if he was like doing freelance truck driving work, if I could like advocate for him through here for people that were interested in contacting him to do like freelance work outside of All Star whatnot.
If anyone has any freelance work for James, just send a message to All Star and I'll hook you up with him. He's the best truck driver ever.
Oh, definitely, because it's good to get good truck drivers. There's a lot of people that are willing to do truck driving gigs. I think the issue in the truck driving industry back in the day, especially, is just who you'd work for. It was a bit dog eat dog, but a lot of truck drivers appreciate like having like a good gig and getting work. And like if I can help like truck drivers get better gigs and get good gigs, I'm willing. Like All Star Wrestling's a pretty good gig. Sounds like he's doing well with it, but I thought I'd encourage like more work for him.
Yeah, well, if anyone's interested, definitely hit me up and I'll put you in touch with the man himself. He's great.
Yeah, I'll lead on to this question. What advice, like this is one that I'd probably be interested in learning from, because I've always said that my dream's to be a wrestling promoter booker, because I've always had a fascination for that aspect of pro wrestling. But I'm going to ask the question. Other people would be interested in this too. Like people have their various passions and dreams for pro wrestling. What advice would you give someone looking to become a promoter?
So on this level, the independent level, promoter's typically the booker as well. So I book the matches with our management group, and we throw ideas around. So I'll break it down into two things. From a booking perspective, you want to probably get with a local promoter, a good local promoter, not a bad one, but a good one. And you want to learn how guys work well together. So that's a tough one. You'll learn it with time. You want to learn every aspect of the wrestling business within the show. So you want to learn how to talk to people, how to communicate what you want properly. You want to learn the best finishes. You want to have, encyclopedic like mind for professional wrestling, which I think I do have in a way. You also want people around you, like good wrestling people, because you're not going to be able to do it all by yourself. You want to have good experienced wrestlers that you can throw an idea around with, and get feedback on. Because I don't always get it right, and neither do our guys. In terms of promoting, that's a different thing. The most important thing is to have a business mind, and you want to learn every aspect of the wrestling business. So for me, I mentioned before, I've got experience in stage production now. So I can set up the lights, I can set up the stage, but I can also referee. I can also do play-by-play. I can ring announce. I can set up the ring if I need to. All these things are things that you're going to need in case things go wrong. You're also going to want to have a good mind for marketing, because if you want to draw a crowd and make money, you need to know how to attract interest with people. A lot of promoters don't know how to do that. They upload a poster, upload some match graphics. Oh, that's it. I hope I draw a crowd, and they've got 60 people at a show. I think there needs to be more of an emphasis on that. Promoters should be able to do almost everything on a show, and if they can't, they should have a person that they should be able to delegate to. So if I'm not sure about something related to wrestling, I've got wrestling people to instantly talk to. But everything else on a show, I can typically do. So, like, for an example, we had a referee pull out at a little regional show in Leeton, which is about 6 hours or 7 hours south of Sydney. So they needed a referee. So I did the ring announcing and refereeing that day. Those are the skills you'd need. And as a booker, you need to learn the business. You need to learn from the people around you, listen, be a sponge, and really just consume everything you can, whether that's shoot interviews, books, listening to the people around you, talking to wrestlers. You want all of that. And once you have all of those things, you should be a pretty decent promoter, in my opinion.
I really enjoyed Kayfabe Commentaries guest booker series. I've been listening to that a lot. I don't think they do many like nowadays, but there's a lot of good ones with Al Snow and Bushwhacker Luke, or I should say Sheepherder Luke. I hate the Bushwhacker gimmick in WWF because they were known as the Sheepherders, but they were a lot better and more brutal.
I was a big fan of the kayfabe commentaries as well. Like when I knew I was gonna start All Star in, I guess, 2017 and 2016, it was kind of like an idea. I instantly started listening to the famous promoters. So there was like the kayfabe commentaries. Like I could learn from, I think Jim Cornette did one, Vince Russo did one, and a lot of people are like, oh, Vince Russo, he's no good. But I feel like you can learn something from everyone. I remember I listened to like a 7-hour Jerry Jarrett interview, just trying to pick their brains and learn. And then as I brought guys in who might have promoted and stuff in the past, I managed to learn from them as well. But there's so much media out there now that we can consume that, that's a vital part of learning how to be a good booker or a promoter. Listening to guys like Jerry Jarrett on shoot interviews.
A lot of great ones too. Not just kayfabe commentaries, just listening to them in general when they do interviews like Jerry Jarrett. Kevin Sullivan's another one. He done some good guest bookers, but he's also done a few shoot interviews where he's had some real interesting stuff to say. I'm going to throw this out there, just a question for myself and also to help other people if they're interested. I'll use myself as an example of my minor experience. With my experience where I've done play-by-play and I've done like columns for like QCW, if I were to train or whatnot to learn more to get into being a promoter booker, what experience will I need to get, and where do you reckon I should look at regarding avenues of training?
To become a booker?
I'd probably look at things from like booker and promoter.
Okay, so you'd want to do both. The best advice I'd give for someone wanting to do both and they're just starting out, I'd get involved with a promotion, and I'd try and make it a good one as well, so you can learn good habits. Like when I first started out, I started out as a referee for IWA, and I managed to go to some other promotions. Some were really, really good, some weren't as good, but I managed to learn, and I try to learn from Mark Mercedes and the people around me. And then I've taken what I've learned from that and I've mixed it in with the shoot interviews and all that. And I managed to learn all that. With you, I'd volunteer to do whatever you can, even if it's just ring crew, and hang around the booker and the promoter and try and learn anything you can. And if they're like me, like I'm always happy to teach people and help out if I have the time. So I think I'd look for that, kind of like a mentor of sorts. If you can get a mentor that knows what they're doing, that's the majority of the battle, I think.
Oh, definitely. Like finding, like you can connect with people in the scene, but finding a good mentor, because people have personalities too. So like you get like a mentor that relates to your personality, that really helps a lot. But also learning from everyone. As the old cliche was, shut your mouth and listen.
Yeah, the best advice I was given when I first started out, and I tell people this, and some people follow it and some people don't, but it's the best advice. I was told to be a sponge, and what they meant by that is just listen, soak in all the information, and don't really say anything back. So I got in quite young, but I was always very quiet and I just listened and I soaked everything in. I didn't know that it would all lead to All Star one day, but it has. And, there's stuff that I regularly think about from those days that has led to, All Star being successful. So that's important. Be a sponge, or as you said, shut up and listen. That's the most important thing, especially when a veteran's around.
Also, one of the lessons, like it's probably one you'd learn more than be told, but I'll try and sort of say to people anyway. I probably need to learn it myself. Is have discernment of what advice you're given and realize like who you're learning from. Would you say like that would be a good one? Because you do get like some people that probably think it's funny telling people shit or trying to have it over people, but like getting like a good veteran like Dazzler Dunlop, for example, that knows what they're doing and has a lot of great insight, and just but also learning from everyone what you can, taking on board good advice and ignoring bad advice. What would your advice be about that?
Even with me to this day, like I will take any advice or listen to anyone, including the fans. Like if the fans have an idea of something they'd like to see, or they want something in production changed, I won't always take it on board, but I'll definitely listen to it and it'll definitely be considered and it'll be definitely talked about in our management group. Um, so yeah, like I don't think you're ever too good or too experienced to not take advice from people. It's something as complex as professional wrestling. You should always be open to learning, and everything that goes along with it involves learning from others. So anyone who says that they're too good to listen to others, that's just silly. Like I'll listen to the ticket people, the opening match guys. I'll always take it on board, and there's times where I'll implement it as well. So yeah, my advice would be to listen to everyone, no matter who they are, no matter what their role is, because they're all important.
And like you were saying, like listen, but weigh up things with like good advice and bad advice, I suppose.
Yeah,
But
you
also
wanna you
do want to
wanna
listen.
you wanna be able to filter out the good advice and the bad advice. So like you're gonna get bad advice always, and you're gonna get people that pitch bad booking. Like I've been pitched so many bad booking ideas. What makes a good booker is being able to filter. And that's what people say about Vince McMahon. Like they say, oh, Vince McMahon wasn't a great booker, he was a great filter. That's the important thing. Creative mind is secondary, but if you know what's going to work on your show and you can filter out good and bad, that's going to be your recipe for success.
Yeah, I'm very into like learning about mental fitness and muscle memory. And I think that's a big part of like learning in pro wrestling. If people learn about building their mental fitness up and muscle memory and taking on board good advice and filtering and learning what bad advice is and having discernment of what they filter. That's where it's at, I think, where you can do really well on it. This is from someone who isn't there yet and hasn't had the experience, but that's sort of like me sort of looking at game plan stuff and foundation, how I'd get there sort of thing.
Yeah, you want to listen to everyone you can, if they're offering advice, it's never from a bad place. Like anyone offering you advice is usually trying to help you. So, I do know that people do take advice and just go like, oh, who's this guy? But for me, it's always worked well for me. I'll listen to anyone. As I said, I won't always use the advice, but if it's there, I'll definitely take it and I'll talk about it and assess it. So I think that's, if you were to become a booker and a promoter, take that on board, and I think that'd be very helpful for you.
Oh, definitely, and helpful for other people listening as well. You'll learn as you go along the journey, as they say of pro wrestling, I suppose. But hopefully you get something out of it where it might help on the road to wisdom at least, or you learn wisdom through experience.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice.
I'll go on to the next question that I put here in the bullet points. What does a promoter look for from a potential wrestler?
It's a good question. What do I look from a potential wrestler? From a behind the scenes perspective, we want a good attitude. So if you come in and you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, like we would frown upon that, really, unless you're a big star. So attitude is the most important thing. Reliability is another one. Like if you're going to come to an all-star show, you're expected to be there at a certain time, and if you're not, all you got to do is call ahead. But the worst thing for a promoter is, and it happened at my last show, the worst thing is when you book someone and they pull out on the night or the day before, and you're left scrambling and trying to change things around. And like if you're not reliable, we don't really want you. And then we also want people that are actively interested in growing the brand as well. So that means like sharing on the social media, being open to cutting a promo. Like some people aren't open to that. We typically get away from those people. And in terms of, on stage, I really like good wrestlers who know what they're doing. They're safe. They're in shape. They're exciting. The people want to see them. Preferably the people will pay to see them, or they've got the potential for people to pay to see them. It all adds to the overall show. Last thing you want is an unreliable person who, can't wrestle and they bring nothing to the table. And I've had those people on before, and it's a pain in the ass.
Oh, definitely. One thing I've done, it's harder. It's easier said than done. Like if you're just going to be unreliable in general, or the general rule is you're not reliable, but then you can run up against stuff like I myself, I was going to make a comeback where I was going to do like ring announcing, play-by-play, etc. And I was toughing it out. Like the upstart company weren't really doing the best job. Like I was doing stuff through social media, promoting it, and I was helping with hype, etc. But like there was a lot of unprofessionalism and politics going on, and because I felt like I had to tough it out, because it's only early stages. I sort of stuck around more longer than I should have, and then probably like a week out from the show, which was pretty unprofessional of me, I ended up pulling out. But lesson I learnt from that: if you can see the writing on the wall and you are going to pull out, you're probably best having the guts to do it sooner. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I like to be given as much notice as possible. Like if you pull out a week in advance, like that's bad as well, but I can maybe work around it. But if you pull out on the day or the day before, Like I'm not going to be able to work around that. I'm going to have to find something or someone else. So yeah, I'd agree. Give as much notice as possible if you do have to pull out, and try not to pull out unless it's something major, like a family emergency or something major. Like I had someone pull out of my last show because they were hungover, and I just thought, that's a very disrespectful reason to pull out. Um, but they did pull out for that reason, and I guess they're happy with their decision. But yeah, I will never respect someone that pulls out because they had a hangover.
Well, my reason for pulling out at the time was I just felt like it wasn't that professional, but I didn't say it like that. I pretty much just said the usual cliche of personal problems. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I probably should have pulled out sooner. I think the company that I pulled out of, they've ended up doing better now, but they actually were around for they actually done one show, then um stopped promoting for a few years and got their business plan better, and I commend them for it. But yeah, I probably didn't do things in the most professional manner. But from my own experience, I'm sort of saying to people, if you feel like a company's not super professional and you don't really want to work with them, try and be more professional and pull out sooner if you're going to pull out on those terms. It's really hard because you've got to work out the politics of things, and sometimes things aren't going to be perfect, and you want to be like a soldier for the company, but then you got to look at, are they really worth serving?
Yeah, that's a good point as well. But I'd say like if you don't rate a promotion, and I am a big believer in not contributing to the bad of Australian wrestling. So if you don't, if you feel a promotion is unprofessional or no good, just don't take their bookings. A lot of the time, a booking on a bad show isn't going to help anyone anyway, unless you're super new. So yeah, I wouldn't take the booking in the first place.
Yeah, the company was an upstart company, so they hadn't done a show yet. I was just thankful that they approached me at the time because I'm still, like, I hadn't done much really. I'm pretty green from my time in QCW, and I was like, oh, this might be an opportunity for me to get back into it. But then if I was to make a comeback, I'd be better off working with an established company that can train me better, and then I can learn more anyway, where I'm not as green. See, my rookie mistake was I done a little bit with QCW, and then there's an upstart company that wanted to hire me because they need a spot to fill, and I probably should like train with an established company and get a foot in the door where I'm more established that way, and I'm working with professionals.
Yeah, you want people around you that are going to help guide you. Like that was so important for me starting out with IWA. I had Mark Mercedes and a lot of the guys there to not that they were actively helping me promote, but I could watch them and learn from them and all that. It's so important to get with a good established promotion, and it's a good thing as well because you're contributing to good Australian wrestling as opposed to mediocre or bad Australian wrestling. That's the advice I try to give everyone. Like, okay, this promotion that draws 40 people in a manor hall might book you as a wrestler, but we're going to book you as a referee, and you're going to be in there with some of the best wrestlers. So learn from it instead of complaining about it. And then that person would say, "Oh, but I'm a wrestler. Can you announce me as a special guest referee?" And then we laugh and we say, "No." But that's how it is. You want to contribute to the good in Australian wrestling and learn from people who know what they're doing. And I think that's the most important thing for anyone, especially someone in your shoes who wants to one day be a booker or a promoter.
Oh, definitely. Like even QCW, they were an upstart company. Jimmy Sparks had experience from NZWPW in New Zealand, and Island Boy Si was the promoter of the Townsville branch. I was just thankful at the time because they were in my local area, and so I was happy to get on board. But in some ways, they were just an upstart company, so I probably would have been better off with like a more established company training under them, and then getting a foot in the door as like a play-by-play person, or even helping out with them. it was probably a good move in regards to, at least I get to have some experience. But the issue you're up against with an upstart company sometimes is like the lack of foundation, because they're only just new to it, where they should probably look out building up like their rookies, but building up more established people, look at who they can hire for play-by-play and stuff. And I probably need to have more training before I go out there.
Yeah, that's right, and it helps if you've got an experience like you mentioned play by play or ring announcing. Like, it helps if you've got someone there that can teach you how to do it and be, like I said before, like a bit of a mentor for you in that role. Like for me, like I have a broadcasting background, so if I was to teach someone to do ring announcing, I could do that. While another promotion that might not have that, they wouldn't be able to do that. So the ring announcer would kind of be on their own. You're not going to get better that way. You're just going to remain the same or decline.
Yeah, I was learning on the job, and I got a foot in the door because people knew me as like a fellow fan or whatnot, and I'd done some writing and stuff, and so I got the job that way. But in retrospect, I'm not like shooting on QCW. I'm fanning for footy opportunity. I'm just sort of getting out the point where I was probably too green and could have actually used a bit more training under me belt, and then gone out there and learn on the job with like more training experience.
Yeah, you always want to be prepared.
But I didn't do too bad considering. But the next question I'm going to lead up to, it all leads up to things, is can you run us through what happens on show day?
Oh, yeah. So for me now, like I have systems in place where everyone kind of has a role. So I guess it all starts with James, the truck driver. He picks the truck up about 9 o'clock and he'll load the ring up. I'll typically arrive at the venue at 10 a.m. now, and I'll set up the lights and the music and all that. He'll turn up with the truck about an hour later. We'll do setup. Then we'll all all the wrestlers will start filing in. We'll start talking about what's going to happen on the show. Around 5 o'clock, things start to get a bit hectic sometimes. Around 7 o'clock, we'll boot the show off, and I always like to start the show on time. A lot of promotions, I'll start their shows late, but All-Star show never been more than 5 or 10 minutes late. Then we'll do the show, and that's very mentally tiring as well, because you're running so many different parts. Like you're running your backstage, you're managing your backstage, but you're managing your ticket takers, your camera people, your truck driver, etc. After that, after the show, we pack everything down and we go home. But for me, like when the ring's getting packed down, there'll be people that want to have conversations with me, and I've got to manage my time and give everyone time to talk and all that. So I can't say I'm too active on ring crew, but thankfully I have such a good team that understand that, and they're happy to do that aspect for me. And then I go home and we talk to Jay Enzo and we get a poster made up and we repeat everything all over again.
Nice. It's really important, like even with what Dazzler Dunlop was saying with play-by-play, I never got taught that a play-by-play person calls the match. And he was saying that back in the day they call a match. So that's a great example of like what you're saying of what goes into what runs a show, and just the various components of like show day and organisation.
Yeah, well, if I had a play-by-play person, which I don't, if we did have one, we would need to be writing notes for them and making sure they know what they're talking about. Like with our ring announcer, like I'll sit with him and tell him what he's got to announce and when he's got to announce it, and any pertinent questions he has, I'll have to answer as well. It's a big operation, and it's very tiring, but also very rewarding.
Oh, definitely. Like there was some stuff that I learnt just through like learning on the job with like tapping into the pulse of the crowd, etc. And also there was a nice card trick that Jimmy Sparks set up, and I was taught where you announce the heel first, then you announce the face. And so when the heel comes out, you hype them up and get the crowd interested. But then when the face comes out, you turn up the volume and hype them up even higher. And that's like a really good card trick to learn. But there's a lot more I could learn if I got back into being a play-by-play ring announcer or whatnot. Leading into a path of creative, etc., or promoter. Just like the learning of calling the match and a lot of those fundamentals that people still teach them. I'd be interested to learn if those avenues are still out there, because I think there's a lot missing with the art of pro wrestling training and art of wrestling, where it'd be good to tap into those resources and make them known.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said before, learn every aspect of the business. So ring announcing, setting up the ring, learn everything. And I think, I think most promoters would allow you to have that avenue. They might not be too pleased about you planning to promote a show because, promoters get territorial. But, that's definitely the way to get a foot in the door. Learn a skill and keep learning and learn every aspect of the wrestling business, because it's all so important, especially if you want to be a promoter and booker.
Yeah, and just looking out, you got your territorial promoters, and so it's hard to actually learn how to be a promoter and booker in some ways, but learning how you can do that, and maybe even looking at things from the territory days of being a professional, and there's promoters out there that are willing to work with each other. So just look at how you do things with respect, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. I try to I'm territorial as well. Another promotion tried to run our building this year, and thankfully they failed at it, and it wasn't very good. But I thought that was one of the lowest acts a promoter could do to another promoter, steal their building. But it happens, and I'd love everyone to be respectful, but the reality is most promoters aren't respectful. There's a handful that are, and they're typically the good promotions. And then there's a bunch of not so good promotions where everyone's trying to undercut one another or hurt one another. And it's a sad thing to see, but that's the reality of wrestling. It's been that way since I started, and it's been that way since Lou Thez was the NWA World Champion.
Yeah, I'm very into, even though you got the territorial aspect, dog eats dog politics, that gets overemphasized sometimes though, because I think people need to look at the respect factor as well. There's a lot of camaraderie and respect in pro wrestling. The passing of the torch, the next generation, so be it creative, be it promoters, bookers, be it wrestlers, if there is an avenue for people to get a foot in the door to learn to be a promoter, for example, regardless of competition and territories and all that, I'm really interested in advocating where people can learn to get a foot in the door, because we do need, when a promoter retires, that next, other people starting promotions within reason and having that flow where you're building up the local scene. And it's good to have promoters that work together that are professional as well, even though there might be territorial issues. Maybe look at it like the territory days where, people had respect for one another with what territories they ran, unless you're trying to take out another promotion and go to war with them, etc., like the mafia.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, and it's such a basic concept that everyone should follow, the respect thing, but it's just not as I said, some good promotions, or well, all the good promotions have it, and the others not so much. But yeah, there's not a lot of respect. I'm pretty successful in Padstow, and I can tell you that 3 promoters have tried to take Padstow from me in 2 years. And, it's gotten to the point where we had to tell the building just to have us exclusive, because people saw us having success and they're like, it must be because of the building. And they try and take the building, when really it's successful because of our hard work and the passion of our fans and everything else. But there's not a lot of respect, and I think if there was, and I know Ken said this on your stream with him the other day. If everyone just worked together, it would be much better off. And I could give advice and help certain promoters, and PWAs the world could do that as well, and we'd have a much better wrestling landscape. But instead, there's disrespectful promoters at the bottom of the hill, and they're just trying to do anything to claw their way to the top. You mentioned older promoters as well. A lot of them don't want to get out of the way. There's promoters that have been promoting for ages, and their ideas aren't working anymore, and they refuse to get out of the way for the young blood. I think I'm the youngest promoter in New South Wales, so that shows just how many old timers are at the top.
Oh, definitely. Trying to think what I was going to say with what you're saying about the venue too. Haven't built up that arena, so it's like your ECW arena, for example, because ECW has been notorious now for, even though they're no longer a promotion, that arena's become like famous with association with ECW, but then a lot of companies that work there. But you've built up that area where it's now like all-star arena, and so I think it's pretty smart to say, can we be exclusive, because we've been actually drawing a lot of people here and we've been doing well here, and we don't really appreciate other promoters trying to take our territory.
Yeah, like the way I saw it, like for Padstow, we found the building. We spent, a considerable amount of money building it up, and we've had all these great wrestlers in that building, like Adam Brooks, Keegan Brattle, Slex, Carlito, Chris Masters, everyone really. And then another promoter goes, oh, like they're having success there. Us too, we want in. We'll steal their venue. And like we had to talk to the venue about that, and they were good enough to understand where we were coming from and make us exclusive. But then the promotion moves 10 minutes up the road, and they're another attempt to be all-star junior. It is disrespectful and annoying at times, but again, it's part of wrestling, unfortunately.
Well, definitely. Like with like the companies that are professional in Australia, and like they probably don't like the idea of competition, but they also are professional enough to know their market and know that they're at a level where they don't need to be super territorial all the time. They can afford to exchange knowledge. If someone was to train more into like the creative aspect of being a booker or maybe a promoter, would you advocate like any of the companies that you think would be more professional and willing to train people the right way where they can learn experience?
Yeah, as I said before, you want to go to I would say maybe the top one, the number one, the number two, or the number three in your respective city for wherever, So like in Sydney, that'd probably be us, PWA, and Newey Pro. In Melbourne, that'd be MCW, Renegades of Wrestling, and there's another one that I'm not sure of the name of. If you can get in, yeah, Melbourne City Wrestling. If you can get in with one of those promotions and learn from the people there, like it's really, really good to do that. But again, if you get in with the wrong people, then it's a problem. The younger people getting in, or the less experienced people, they need guidance, and the guidance is so important. If you don't have that guidance, you're never gonna be successful unless one of these bigger promoters happen to pluck you out of the smaller promotion, but that doesn't happen very often. So yeah, it's very important to get in with a good promotion.
Oh, definitely. Melbourne City Wrestling, I think on their website from memory, did have various like courses where they'd actually train people in production and stuff like that. So I thought that was really good. So that's an avenue I've thought about. But yeah, like just looking at, I suppose, how you pay your dues, being respectful and the right way to learn. Like obviously, people have become promoters, where, there's been a foot in the door. They've either built up reputation or they've been screwed. But, so it is possible. It's just working out like what sort of promoter you're going to be and how you go about it, I suppose.
Yeah, well, hopefully a good one. Like if I say this to everyone, if you're not ready for the job of booker or promoter, just don't do it. It's to do it properly is a lot of hard work, and it's rewarding and fun, but it's so hard as well. And if you're going to do it poorly, then there's enough promoters doing it poorly. So I want good promoters, and I don't mind if a good promoter comes to Sydney. But problem is, so many bad promotions pop up now that it's detrimental to New South Wales wrestling.
And do you reckon with like the areas people run, building up the local scene, like I have different sort of outlooks on this, but you've got your venue you run, but do you reckon some venues could be shared or some venues that are exclusive, but like looking out like promoters getting along where we're drawing like building up the local scene and even promoting each other, maybe sharing flyers for different promotions, getting to know about like different companies, sort of looking at it like a music scene with the gigs and just building up everyone. What would your take be on that with like what's feasible?
Well, you ask if people can share buildings. I think so, but in our circumstance, Padstow is our main building, and we don't really want to share it. And the promotion that happened to get it from under us, they weren't an affiliate of ours. They're not a friend of ours. The respectful way is to come up to us and say, "Hey, do you mind if I run this building?" And if it's beneficial for their brand and beneficial for our brand, then we can work out a deal. Like there's a building of ours in Western Sydney called the St Mary's Leagues Club, and we run there. And if another promoter happened to come along and say, "Hey, can we use this building?" we wouldn't be as passionate about not sharing it as we are in regards to Padstow. But I'm also I think it's important to kind of make your own way in this crazy world of wrestling as well. Like find your own venues and build up your own venues and get that audience of yours in there, as opposed to trying to steal from an established brand that spent the time building a venue up.
Oh, definitely. I watch a lot of like mafia shows and films, so I'll reference watching like some of that. I suppose it's like people will work together, but then if you're trying to steal someone's crust, they're not really happy about that, and so you go to war. But like if you do things where you respect the other person and you can work with them and it's beneficial, or you look at like respecting their territory, and that's really the way to go. It's all about respect, I suppose. But yeah, you get like the people going to war with one another over territory.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've ever had a wrestling war or mafia situation where legs are getting broken and things like that. But it's it's an annoyance when you spend money building something up and someone else just comes along and tries to take it out of jealousy or wanting to replicate your success and things like that. Like I don't respect anyone like that, and the promotion wasn't successful at all in that building. So I guess that's testament to how good they are in this landscape of New South Wales wrestling.
And it'd probably be really bad if like you had someone come along and like I'll reference Tony Khan, even though AEW are still trying to establish themselves and there's a lot of money behind them and they're doing all right in some ways, but like it's probably not the best references. Maybe Herb Abrahams with his fully run UWF, where they try and take the market, but then they haven't got a solid setup long term, and they're still like the top talent. But then the company folds and it stuffs it up, and then a lot of like promoters that build a foundation properly have to deal with like the super buzz promotions, a bit like Super League with like the rugby league, where it didn't last super long, but it was sort of like hyped for a short while, and then it went bust because it was they ran the business poorly.
Yeah, with the Super League though and the ARL at the time, at least those two were competitive. With the Padstow situation, we weren't concerned that they could possibly move us out of the market or take the market from us. Our concern was they'd put in a bad show and potentially draw some of our fans over, which they did because they were, of course, flyering at our show and handing out flyers as our people were leaving. So a few of our fans sampled them and they paid, $30, $40 for a really bad show. And, we don't want our fans seeing a bad show, especially in that building. But that's what happened. Thankfully, it hasn't turned many people off Australian wrestling. It's just turned them off that particular promotion. But that was our concern. We were never concerned that they were going to take over or do better than us because I don't think they have the ability to.
Yeah, definitely. That's another concern too, because it does happen. Like, it's improving where there's more awareness of the local scene. But a lot of people that don't know about the local scene and aren't into learning about indie wrestling and aren't super obsessed, they'll be like casual fans and all they know is WWE shit. I shouldn't say that. Like, some people like WWE, but so when they go to a local Aussie show, like, their first glance at like a local show, if it's a professional production like yours, people will be like, oh, well, I'm coming back for more. I really like what we're doing in our local scene. But if they go to like a shit show, you get like the attitude where it's quite easy to do, where they're like, oh, Aussie wrestling shit. Oh, I'll just stick to watching WWE.
Yeah, 100%. And most people who are WWE fans and, they might not know about the Australian scene, they're probably going to assume that the Australian scene isn't great anyway. So then if we put on shows that are held at PCYCs or whatever, and the production's bad and speakers aren't working and there's 35 people in the crowd and an elderly person sweeping up around you as you watch wrestling, it's kind of like, oh, do I really want to come back here? But like with All Star, there's you come to Padstow and yeah, it's an RSL club and RSL clubs aren't that hip to be, but you go in and it's a small arena type setting and we've got lights and we look good and the wrestlers look good and they've got good gear. There's no elderly people sweeping up around you. It's a positive vibe, and we usually have good crowds at Padstow as well, which helps a lot as well. So I think you're right. It's so important for a person's first taste of Australian wrestling to be, oh, this is really good. I can't wait to go back. When's the next show? And we do get a fair bit of that. But then if they somehow stumble across one of these, outlaw mud shows, as Jim Cornette would say, then they might be like, oh, I don't really want to go back. That's the problem with a lot of the I won't say smaller, I'll say the muddier promotions in New South Wales.
Yeah, I think there's people who are like, oh, local wrestling, oh, cool, but they have this expectation at WWE. They'll go to a local show, and if they're a shit promotion, it meets the bill of, oh, I didn't think it would be good anyway. But if you go to like an all-star show, they're impressed with it, and then they might end up just stopping watching WWE and watch All-Star instead and watch better wrestling.
Yeah, well, that's my aim, and I think it's the aim of the better promotions in New South Wales as well. Like, we want the person who might watch WWE to turn up at our shows and go, oh, All Star's great, or PWA's great, Newey Pro, great promotion, can't wait to be there. That's what I want. And I think we're getting there slowly but surely, and I think one day, hopefully, the New South Wales and the Australian scene in general will be a lot bigger.
Yeah, the dream for me as like a local scene enthusiast, I've watched the good and the bad and the ugly, etc. I can watch various levels and appreciate it, but I prefer like the better companies. But sometimes I like to watch the crap stuff just to like get perspective and something different. But I think the awareness of like there's actually great wrestling in Australia. Australia has an awesome scene, and when I was talking to Ken about the history of Australian wrestling. People don't realise how big it was in Australia. Like, we'll pretty much Britannia. Britannia was England when the Romans ran it, and we basically had like a really good platform for pro wrestling at one stage of a lot of big stars.
Yeah, well, I read Ken's book, and he talked about a lot of that. Like Andre the Giant came through for a tour in like I don't know what year it was, but he'd been in like a building local to me, and I'd never known of it. I think not a lot of people know about Australian wrestling is because after the WCW era, it kind of just there wasn't there wasn't a lot out there, or there isn't a lot out there now for us to go back and look at. Like there were no TV shows, there was very little recorded shows, and there's very little on YouTube or the internet. So there's kind of like a big gap where nobody really knows what happened, and that's why it's important to have guys like Ken write down their stories and what they know, because without that we might not know the history of Australian wrestling once those legends are gone.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to sort of encourage through Good Cuppa of LLJ, like the history of Australian wrestling, and maybe encouraging people to come forward and make it accessible where people realise, oh, we had like a really good history, the ins and outs, and realise Australian wrestling have a lot of potential and has had a really good history when we've done it right.
Yeah, well, WCW Australia, which of course was the territory days, they were the first national promotion. So before WWE went national, before WCW, the American WCW went national, it was all WCW Australia. They would go all around Australia and do their shows. So Australia is so important to the history of wrestling, but there's not a lot out there about it, which is a shame.
Oh, definitely. Like I've had to, just through being enthusiastic over time, I've like found out bits and pieces through like Yahoo and Google, and so I've learnt that way, Wikipedia, whatnot. So the information's out there, but like for like your general fan, or even your general indie fan, or your general mark, or whatever you want to label it as, they might not know about the actual history of what we've actually had here in Australia. And so I'm really impressed with it, where I think there's a lot of awareness of like the American scene or other scenes like the British scene, where they've also had like a lot of really good history, but people aren't aware of what we've actually had here in Australia when we've done it right as well, where we've actually had really big like promotions and stars.
Yeah, it's been a great scene before, and it's still a great scene now. It's just gets diluted sometimes by people, but I don't want to keep being too negative about the bads of New South Wales wrestling, because we've really got a lot of good here as well, and a lot of stuff that I'd actively want to promote as well.
Yeah, I think with like technology and social media and people being signed to WWE and experience whatnot, I think the scene's starting to improve professional wise, where there was a dark period where it wasn't as professional. Like some people did it better than others, but it wasn't like as common, because there was a period where Australian wrestling sort of went down the tube a little bit. But I think it's making a comeback now, where we're starting to do big things in Australia.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have said we're the next United Kingdom of wrestling. So the UK had that big boom period a few years back. I think I agree with that. Australia and New Zealand will have that soon as well.
Oh, definitely. New Zealand's another market where they've actually got a lot of good things happening now too. Like I think I watched some of the promotion Southern Pro Wrestling in New Zealand on stream, and they had a lot of great talent wrestle there, like Will Ospreay, for example.
Yep.
Who's wrestled here in Australia as well for various companies. He's a pretty good wrestler. Yeah, I was trying to think what I was leading on from that. Oh yeah, we've got the touring companies too, like World Series Wrestling, and there's a new one called Oceania Pro Wrestling. I try and sort of encourage people of those. Whether they're going to be super successful or not is another thing. I think World Series Wrestling has done all right. What do you make of like the big wrestling tours we've had here in Australia over the years?
Well, my first ever wrestling show was the first World Series tour back in 2005. It had like Jeff Jarrett and Rhino and the Dudley Boys. I encourage and support that, of course. Like, it's a good way for the local fans to see a lot of international wrestlers. And, like the World Series tours, I think they've got like John Morrison and Matt Cardona was on one of them. I think he's on the next one as well. Like, it's a great opportunity for fans to see all these internationals that they might not be able to see, either from the WWE, who hasn't been here in a few years, or, a promotion like mine that might not have the budget to bring out 10 or 15 internationals. So World Series is great for that. I don't know too much about Oceania Pro Wrestling except the initial announcement that they're going to do something big, but certainly looking forward to seeing what they can do as well, because it seems like they've really got someone who knows what they're doing at the head of that. And, ultimately, if they're successful, that leads to more success for the all-stars of the scene, I guess.
Yeah, I'm hoping Oceania Pro Wrestling do really well, and it's not a big hype and then another company that's folded. But yeah, I'm behind them doing well where it helps the scene. Because I think like big companies that would actually make it big, companies that would help the scene and not actually bury the little companies, because you need, like, good example, rugby league. You've got like your mainstream rugby league in Australia, and you've got like your local rugby league. Like, you need local and you need mainstream.
Yeah, that's it. And if an Oceania Pro Wrestling can help, that's great. Like, I know World Series Wrestling is helping as well by putting local wrestlers in there with some of the best wrestlers of all time. So these bigger promotions are definitely a positive for Australian wrestling.
Oh, definitely. Couldn't remember if I was leading on to something else with that. I've probably hit, like, I probably said most of what I was saying of that. Leading on to like something that I think people would be very interested in. I know I'm always interested. Like, I love me wrestling stories and whatnot. Can you tell us any funny stories in All Star?
Oh, there's so many funny stories. Like there was a situation where, no, that's probably too extreme for this podcast. We went to a town called Cuppa, and like we found an abandoned pub, and one of the wrestlers like took like a first aid kit and 25 forks from this abandoned pub and packed them in his bag. And we're like, what's going on? And then like that same guy locked himself out of his room and he out of his hotel room. He's trying to find his key, and he throws his bag and a bunch of forks fall out, and it's like, what's going on? And then just a lot of funny moments as well, like just hanging out with the guys and just having a good time with wrestlers. Wrestlers are a lot of fun to be around. And then a lot of stuff when I was younger as well. Like, I've told this story publicly before, and I hope he doesn't mind, but famous Australian wrestler in the scene, the Birdman. I remember one time when I was like 17, I was nestling up under a microwave when I was still paying my dues, and I was trying to sleep, and he'd met a 70-year-old woman at the hotel, and he had relations with her, but he couldn't finish the job, so he come down and finished the job in the toilet. So wrestling's a crazy, crazy world. Not for the lighthearted, but those are two of my favorite stories: the fork story and the Birdman story. Those are the two that immediately come to mind.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Like, one to cease amazed with like some of the larrikins in pro wrestling at times.
I love it. I love all the different. The best thing about wrestling is there's so many different cultures, personalities, and it doesn't matter when you get there on show day. everybody generally loves everybody, and it doesn't matter where you're from or what you're about. It just matters what you can bring to the show. And yeah, that's an aspect I love of it. I met so many interesting people through wrestling from all sorts of backgrounds.
I've got a funny story I can tell. I won't mention the talent. I have no bones in mentioning them, but just in case. But like, it's a interesting story. I've had various reactions from it. I think it's funny myself. I got ribbed. Um, the issue, I don't know whether I got ribbed or whether the promoter just wasn't game to ask, but I had like the run sheet of people I announced to the ring and how much they weigh, etc.
Yep.
Like their stats. And there was like two wrestlers that were both female talent. And because I'm being anal and trying to be professional, I actually walked up to one of the people and said to him, because it wasn't in the stats, how much do you weigh so I can write it down? And she took it as professional. But the other female wrestler, because her stats were there, it was just the one that wasn't. So I don't know if it was set up as a rib or what. Goes, can you change my stats? I weigh this much right in front of her boyfriend.
Yeah, was it an outlandish number or was it her normal weight?
I think she was ribbing me because I asked the other lady her weight, and so she was setting me up where it become like a big rib where I was set up to look a bit like silly because I'm asking a lady her weight. But yeah, where I was coming from, I was being anal because I was like, oh, we need to know for like the stats when I announce it to the ring. But in hindsight, it was a pretty funny situation because a lot
Yeah,
of
it
people
seems
probably
pretty
would.
harmless.
Yeah, a lot of people probably wouldn't have the guts to actually ask. But my attitude was, it just seems stupid if I don't have her weight and I'm announcing like her name and she comes to the ring and then the other person actually have her weight and height.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's a funny situation to be in because you're set up where you know you have the innuendo and people are like it turns into a bit of a locker room prank where I'm asking a lady her weight.
Yeah, well, luckily, there's no heat from that. I'm sure it was all good and probably just a rib, as you said.
Yeah, and then the other lady wrestling, she ribbed me as well, saying, "Can you change my weight on this weight?" Sort of set me up in front of her boyfriend, and the boyfriend was behind me, and I was getting like super embarrassed. He knew that his girlfriend was ribbing me, so he was kind of laughing.
Classic rib, classic rib.
Yeah, so it ended up turning into like a big rib, but I thought it was a funny story to tell in that situation where sometimes you sort of try and be professional, but you got to be. It's sometimes awkward regarding like various things that can happen, like the situation I was in where I'm trying to get the right weight for when I announce someone to the ring, and I'm having to ask a lady her weight, and then all the innuendo that gets attached with it, and then turns into a big rib where the other lady says to me, "Oh, can you change my weight to this?" And then the boyfriend's there and putting me on the spot, mate, embarrassing me.
Hey, as a promoter, I would have appreciated you asking the weight and noticing that there's a problem. So you would have been all sweet with me.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like a lot of people um, sort of have an attitude. It's improving now for local shows where people are more professional, but I think there's always been this Aussie attitude of, oh, we're laid back, and they sort of give you the treatment like you're a square if you've been too professional in the past. And so it's really hard to bypass that in the past. I think it's improved now, but like it was frustrating back in the day because there was people that would bag you out for not taking it too seriously, but they could actually afford to take things more seriously. Like they would bag you out for taking it too seriously, I reckon.
Yeah, I'm all about taking things seriously and being professional. I love a good rib, but we typically do our ribs in the hotel rooms after shows as opposed to, on the day. But they got you with a pretty good and innocent one there.
Yeah, I think it's a case of balancing out being professional and also being able to have a laugh.
Yeah, that's it. You don't want someone who's ultra serious all the time. That's not a good personality trait.
Like, I took it well and I reacted well, and I could be a bit of a larrikin at times myself, but yeah, I think you can be like too much of a I'm just going to be laid back when you need to be more professional, but then you can be like too serious. Like a great example, back in the day, I think now people are more willing to actually say I was a wrestling fan, but it used to shit me back in the 2000s and whatnot. There was a lot of people who did wrestling, and they would bag you out if you showed passion, if you're trying to get involved, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm not even a wrestling fan. I just do this to pick up chicks. I'm a gym junkie." Or I'd be like, I'm just doing this for fitness, and they'd belittle what they should have a passion for. And I sort of felt like, well, why are you even doing wrestling? But now I think it's improved where people admit they're actually wrestling fans and they have had a background as a fan.
Yeah, I can't say we have too many people in All Star who aren't passionate about the professional wrestling business. So I'd say that that's changed quite a bit.
Have you seen that attitude with like back in the day where you had like a few people that would belittle you if you would show that you're a fan of wrestling and you're getting involved?
Oh, never from people inside the business. I remember in high school, people would kind of poke fun at the wrestling stuff, but never anything major. Like when I came in, everyone took it pretty serious, and there was nobody who was saying, "Oh, I'm not here to be a wrestler." That's just kind of absurd if you're training to be a wrestler. But I do understand the fitness aspect as well. But yeah, if you're taking bumps and trying to learn to be a wrestler, you need to be passionate for it, or you're never going to achieve that goal. It's too difficult otherwise.
Yeah, I was learning to be a wrestler at the time. Didn't finish wrestling school, but some of the vets would like pay out on you because they're sort of like playing down at their fans. That was the trend at the time. But I think a lot of people left, and a lot of ones that are vets from that era now are happy to admit they're fans. I think there was just this stupid trend of, oh, you can't admit that you're a fan of wrestling because you've got to be a professional. But then when
Yeah.
Steve Corino toured Australia, all those idiots that were saying that were up his bum, and they were like wanting to get an autograph and take their photo with him.
Yeah, we're all fans at the end of the day. Like you need to be a fan to get into wrestling, I think, especially if you're going to stick with it.
And they went clubbing with him or whatnot. But I think most of the people from that era would know what I'm on about. I think there was a lot of vets that actually were fans. They just wouldn't say it because of the trend where it wasn't cool. But
Yeah,
then
well,
it's
I
stupid.
think it's cool to be a fan again.
Yeah, I think during like that time they were sort of making out it's not trendy to admit you're a fan when you're involved in wrestling, and it wasn't cool. But I think nowadays that's phased out, and a lot of people involved in wrestling will happily talk about what they have a passion for, and I think it's great.
Yeah, so do I. Totally agree.
Um, Before I lead off, 'cause I've been on the live stream for a while, we've probably got better content than a 3 hour WWE pay per view, though. Um,
Well.
I'll ask you if you got any more funny stories or not really with All Star.
um, I haven't really got funny stories, but like it's just like not stuff that I could say, but like just so many good stories, like the Chris Masters one I told you. There was a story where Minoru Tanaka thought we were wrestling at the big Wollongong Win Stadium. Um, Keegan on the beers is always fun. Yeah, there's so many positive things. Like we've done quite a few tours this year, and it's been cool hanging out with a bunch of people. Like I went to Leeton with a crew that I didn't really know, and they were all really cool. And we went up to Casino and Evans Head, and we met so many people there. It's been a really good and fun year in terms of stories for All Star, and I'm looking forward to 2023.
Oh, definitely. Actually, I'm going to ask this. I don't know whether it's every promotion. Some people are into it, some aren't. Have you ever got involved in there's some people involved with pro wrestling that are quite the party animals? Do you have any stories from clubbing with people in pro wrestling, or do you stay away from that?
Well, I don't really drink and I don't smoke or party that much, but I've been out with a few of the guys. Like my good friend Keegan Brettle, he's a bit of a party animal, and my buddy Hell Yeah, he's into a bit of different type of partying, but that's cool. And I did go and party with a bunch of guys in Leeton, which is a very small regional town, and it was very funny seeing Aries and all these guys just off their head, and I'm sitting in the corner with our truck driver, just chilling and keeping an eye on them. But no, I don't do too much partying, but there's been some fun times in All Star, and yeah, we've got a few party animals on the roster.
Oh, definitely. I think with pro wrestling, it's a cliche that everyone's going to party, and I think it's acceptable not to. But there are people that are into the party scene as well. And I'd probably vary with it where I'd be conservative. But if I feel comfortable, I myself, I'm more of a barbecue piss up person. I'd rather do that than nightclubbing. But I have been nightclubbing. But if you're sort of going out with socializing with your fellow peers from pro wrestling, it's probably a good thing just for the social aspect. But and like you said, you see some funny things. So a good example, this wasn't with people from pro wrestling, but with some mates, we went clubbing, and you know how it's a thing at the clubs where people smoke cigarettes, and a chick will ask, "Can you light my smoke?"
I didn't know that was a thing, but yeah, go on.
Well, usually it's a symbol of it's a flirtation thing. There's probably
Uh,
heaps I don't know about clubbing, but a lady will say, "Can you light my smoke?" And then you get into a conversation. But they'll I'm in hysterics still thinking about it. But we had a situation where there was this really old, ugly looking thing that tried to do it to one of my mates, and we just walked away and we're pulling faces "Oh, yuck, oh."
I should have gone with it. You've always gotta hunt a few toads before you find a princess.
That's it. Yeah, I don't think we were drunk enough to at the time, but yeah, some people probably wouldn't worry. But I get what you mean too. But I thought it was a funny story with yeah, that happening. To be honest, I don't think she should have been clubbing at her age. But then again, you can't really discriminate. But I think clubbing's more young person's game, or people our age game, rather than people her age, because I don't know how old she is, but she looked like a boomer.
Oh, come on. Boomers need love too.
Yeah, I suppose it comes down to respecting your elders. Ha ha ha.
That's it.
But bad joke. Um, on that note, we've told a few funny stories, whatnot. I've taken up a fair bit of your time. Um, it's been a really interesting conversation. Anything you'd like to say? Um, add, draw interest for, etc.
Uh,
Before we go.
just to visit All Star Wrestling Australia. Our website is www.allstarwrestlingaustralia.com.au. We've got YouTube channel, which is updated pretty regularly. And if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, that is where you'll get a daily update. Yeah, All Star, one of the growing promotions in New South Wales. And I think we're going to do a lot of big things in 2023. So be good to get as much support as possible.
Awesome stuff. Would love to have you on again. The idea of Good Cup of LLJ that I'm hoping to go for is having like a show where I'll have fans on here, wrestling personalities, whatnot, and it's like having a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and we'll just chat, um, talk about stuff that's really interesting, like we did today, and get a conversation going.
I'll have to hook you up with my good friend Will from France. He'd be a great guest on here.
Awesome stuff. Because I'm really keen to just talk to people from various backgrounds because I think it gets the community happening too, where like my pro wrestling fan group, Laz's pro wrestling fan group, having like access on there with like good couple of LLJ, talking to wrestling personalities, fans, and then you're building up, knowledge of the scene locally and internationally, and you're talking to fans and their point of view on stuff, or you're talking to wrestling personalities, and you're just encouraging like a positive scene.
Yeah, that's what everyone wants in the end, a nice positive scene.
Definitely. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'll let you go. Is there anything else you want to add, or will I sign off from there? Well, I sign off.
No, I'd just like to thank you for having me and anyone who's listened live. I definitely appreciate it. I like people to hear my views, so this has been therapeutic, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well, Lazar.
Oh, definitely. I'm still learning in some ways. I probably go on tangents a little bit. Too many watching Rowdy Piper growing up with his promos.
Yeah, Roddy Piper was the best. I agree with you.
Yeah, he's really good. Like you'd go on, but then there was all this like hidden meaning where he had like a lot of wisdom about the wrestling business. If you look at his promos closely, there was like a lot of really good insight.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the greatest of all time.
I've been watching like the old Legends House on Binge. That's pretty funny. Like it's not my favorite show, but just out of interest, for something different.
Yeah, from what I remember, that was a really cool concept of a TV show. Just getting all the legends together, and a lot of them are passed away now, so it'd be good to relive that.
Oh, definitely. But I'll let you go anyway. Yeah, look forward to doing more of these and having you on again, and anyone else you can hook us up with, and yeah, get the
I'll
conversation going and um,
I'll be
draw interest.
messaging the big four and trying to get them all on for you, Lazar. It'll be great. Anyway, I'll leave you to it. Thank you, Lazar,
No worries, been a pleasure. Appreciate your time.
and yours too. Have a good one.
You too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Catch up. Bye. We're about to sign out. Just want to say I appreciate having Mitch on here. It was a really good conversation. Hopefully, yeah, hope other people enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, we had like a lot of really good stuff we spoke about. Hope to have more people on here chatting away. Um, See where the conversation leads. Um, yeah, let us know. Leave like comments, whatnot, or private message us on any advice you'd have for the show. Anything that would be good to look at with like how to operate the show and different advice for it. But yeah, I felt like it was a really interesting conversation today. Quite fascinated. Look forward to doing more of these. Take care, everyone. Happy New Year. We've got a few more coming up too. Just want to make the announcement that we've got Joe. Can't pronounce his last name, which is stupid because my mum has Italian background, but I haven't been raised authentically Italian. I was raised more Aussie. But we got Joe Zapier on here. He's going to be on the show on January 3rd. He has background as the Don Rocker Billy Rebel. He also has background in like acting, entertaining, etc. He'll be on here next week, January the 3rd, 12 noon, New South Wales time, 11 a.m. Queensland time. I'll probably have to ask him how you pronounce your last name as well. Some shit with a pronunciation. And we have Peter Farry on here on January 8th, Sunday, January 8th, from 1 p.m. Victorian time, 12 p.m. Queensland time, I believe. He'll be a real good one to talk to. He's had 32 years experience in the local industry of pro wrestling in Australia with various roles, etc. And another big announcement that I'm going to announce, trying to remember his podcast because I want to put that over. But I'm going to announce the times or whatnot anyway. So I may not say it here, but we actually have 15-year plus veteran Ace Darling coming on the show. He has had background in the American wrestling scene where he's wrestled like as a top talent on the independents. He's also wrestled in the mainstream, has tagged with Devon Storm, Crowbar. They were a pretty good tag team, and he does a podcast called Wrestling Then and Now. Looking forward to talking to him. Trying to remember the times we've negotiated. I think it'll be like 7 p.m. New Jersey time and 10 a.m. Queensland time. So looking forward to that. Take care, take care, everyone. Anyway, Happy New Year, whatnot. I'll do a countdown and then I'll leave it at that. Been a pleasure. Until next time. You can tell I'm a bit tired. Looking forward to more good Cuppa of LLJ. I'm probably tired because I haven't slept super well, but also there's a lot of like deep food for thought with what we spoke about with Mitch, and so I'm a bit tired because there was a lot of great food for thought. But I'll do one more countdown, and then we'll get off of here, I think. This is LLJ. Until next time on Good Cuppa with LLJ. Been a pleasure as always. Peace.